Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an interesting presentation, I suppose. We haven't done one of these in forever. And this is probably the most detailed one we've done. And today we're going to be discussing something kind of cool. It's called the Warfare mode. Technically, this quantifies as a mini game. Now you know Kibs. Kibs hates half-assing things. So when we came up with this mini game, it was all about making it actually fleshed out, not this hollow, janky little puzzle piece of shit. Don't get me started. Oh god, Bioshock. I have flashbacks to those stupid tube puzzles. So let's cut right to the case, shall we? So, I've got a little handy-dandy notepad just to juggle my memory because I'm doing 7,000 things at once. I shouldn't be, but I am. Alright, there we go. So, the most important question, and by the way, welcome everybody. Welcome. Let's turn off those, how about that? Alright. So, what's the purpose of the Warfare mode? What's the purpose of this minigame? What does it do and what does it add to the overall game, right? Well, I do want to explain that a little bit because there needs to be a purpose behind everything. It was actually one of the core ideas behind the designing of the game and the gameplay behind Legends of Terrestria. And I didn't want to add modes just for the sake of adding modes for no reason that don't serve a function or a purpose. And so the Warfare mode was like, okay, what if we talk about games like, I'll use this example, I've used it before. What if we talk about games like Dragon Age, or, for example, Mass Effect? Any sort of game where there's a massive climactic ending, and you're recruiting the aid of Dowie, or dwarves, or, Asari, or whatever mystical beings and races and creatures to come to your aid, right? And in some games, it's just a cutscene, like it was in Mass Effect, and it didn't really change anything about the actual gameplay. And in others, it did a little bit, right? Like Dragon Age, I believe, whether you sided with the Templar or the Mages, they showed up in the end to help. I only know that because Bubbles told me, because our save crashed. And so that's the idea behind that. And I was like, you know what? What if we had it so that you could actually play with those things? What if that was more of an actual mechanic, and it wasn't just like this one throwaway thing from one thing, and or for one sort of cutscene or one mini game for one climactic battle. What if it was something that was used again and again and again, and was this thing that solely built towards something else? So it's building. So it's not just this tacked on thing that just does one thing, right? And so that's the idea of the Warfare mode, to give the narrative aspect that sort of grandiose feel. And that's what I wanted to achieve with this. That was the entire idea, is that there's more to it than just some simplistic little cutscene or little tiny mini game. And so I wanted to flesh it out as much as possible, give it all the details, give it all the flavor, so that when you do play this mode, it's not something you're going to dread, absolutely dread and go like, oh, Jesus Christ, not this thing again. That's kind of the thing that I want to avoid. That's like the hacking minigame problem that I mentioned, where a lot of those little tacked on minigames were either, they're short and sweet enough, or they're bad. So that's the idea behind the Warfare mode and how it sort of came to be. So before us, we have a couple different tabs you'll see in the top there, and we'll alternate between them all once we get to them. But the first thing is, this is the tactical map. It's what we're calling it for now, and it's what's being called in-house, so bear in mind, you guys are seeing the design phase. So this art on all was all... Normally, it's pretty sketchy. You guys get to see something special, because this presentation was meant to show you guys a little bit behind the scenes and how this works. So when I'm doing stuff, so this is my job. Oh, people wonder what I do in the team, right? Because we got artists and programmers. I do the game design and the writing. So, here's the tactical map. And this is where the strategic stuff takes place of the Warfare mode. You'll see a bunch of different icons, and we'll go through basically the rough idea of what you'll see here on the screen. Here we have little character icons. These represent units, or entire regiments. They're not meant to be an individual character, versus in the base game's combat system, it's character on character based. In this mode, instead of it being character on character inside of buildings or on a city street or in a forest or something, it's taking place on a larger scale, a much larger scale. And that's why we have these icons represented. This map is supposed to be the idealistic layout of an actual table map with the little pieces on it. Sort of simulate it. That was the idea. And And you're going to see a couple different elements here. And we'll describe some of the environmental elements first. So you'll notice these gray clouds and stuff, right? These, we have Fog of War as a mechanic. Or that's one mechanic I definitely want, because it adds a little bit of mystery to the map, adds a little bit of like awareness and all that stuff. It matters, and it makes it super important. So we have a couple layers of it. The first layer I want to talk about is like the I forget the technical term. It's called the Shroud, but it's when it's pitch black and you can't quite see. So these are these cloudy rolling tiles that you can't see because it's never been explored before. Explored tiles will be revealed so you can see what they were beforehand, but it's covered in Shroud, and the Shroud represents that you've lost line of sight on that. Bear in mind that this isn't in any way relevant to what the actual line of sight system will be in actual squares distances. This is just a simple idea of how that works there. And so the idea of Fog of War, it's a pretty simplistic idea, but it adds a layer of strategy because you don't really know what's behind the mountains, you don't know what's behind the trees, and stuff like that. So it makes you have to think, is there an ambush or something going to be, behind that? And that's kind of the idea with that. And I've always been a big fan of having Fog of War because it makes it uncertain. And a lot of turn-based games I studied, actually, there is no Fog of War, and I was surprised, actually. But I figured I didn't want to do that because I felt like more systems made it better if it was a little bit more complex in a more strategic sense. The next thing that I want to talk about that's kind of a tricky part is elevation. Elevation on a 2D plane is kind of a bitch, as you might imagine. But this wasn't actually too hard. So fortunately, I came up with a relatively simple system, right? So we have elevation. So what does elevation do? It affects the visual range. Pretty simple. For example, the cannon sitting atop here can spot, further back and other things that it wouldn't otherwise be able to if it was just on a flat tile. Elevation also does other things that I want to do sort of like mechanically, but this is getting into the balance aspect. For example, like archers and stuff will be able to shoot farther, just because not only that's a historically accurate thing, is that generally something on a hill, like a cannon or an archer, can generally lob further than they would if they were on level ground. And that's the idea behind that. There's other systems I do want to mention, like, for example, the riflemen compared to, like, archers. If, let's say, there's a little dude standing in front, this unit could not shoot those guys over there because there's an allied unit intervening in that path, and they're on the same level, so it's like level 1, right? The hills are like level 2. If a rifleman unit was standing on that hill, and an allied unit was there, and an enemy unit was there, it still couldn't shoot because it couldn't lob. And firing into melee, I imagine there's going to be some serious penalties, especially early matchlock weapons. Like, it's more like boom, scary noise than it is ouch, that hurt. But yes. You also notice a few other things that I wanted to indicate. So, one way to establish unit health, right, is by looking at the model in general. Now, in the base combat system, units have different stages of, like, health. Only 2 at the moment is the plan because it gets super expensive. One is full health, where they're standing, upright and perfectly normal in their combat posture. The second phase is when they're a little bit slumped because they're beginning to die, as they're poked with holes, bleeding out. And so I wanted that to represent on this map as well. There's going to be a lot more statistical information because the user interface is not ready for this yet. The user interface is going to be based off of UIV4, which is the user interface that Disco is implementing into the base game. The reason for that is I want it to be fairly seamless when you switch between regular combat into the warfare mode. That way you don't go like, what the hell? Like, this UI is fucking everywhere. I don't want that. I want it to be very easy to go between. And so that's the idea behind that. The next little mechanic to mention is tiles. Tiles do different things, as you would imagine. Urban tiles, wall tiles, road tiles, plain tiles, trees, hills. For example, roads are pretty simple. You can probably imagine. Gives a bonus to movement, so they can move further on a square, like series of square road tiles than they could otherwise. Also, I'll answer super chats after. I want to get through the general presentation, and then we'll touch up on comments and questions, and we'll have a little discussion about it. And here's some of your feedback, because I'm curious. Right now, I'm just focusing on this because I got to keep my brain focused. And so, yeah, the tiles will do different things. Like forests will give cover from ranged attack, and depending on how many layers of trees they're behind, it'll cover them more. Now, I'm not sure how to add variation to the tree type tiles yet. That's more of an experimental thing. I had some ideas on different types of trees and densities, but for now, it's just a tree tile. We're just going to have to float with that for just a while. And there's impassable terrain like mountains and rivers. I do want there to be more than just bridge crossings like shallows and other things. Well, it's not reliable on bridges, excuse me. Excuse me, I need to clean my... Let's take a sip of some coffee here so I don't cough. The other systems, as far as we're going to mostly touch upon environmental first, is weather. So, for example, if it's raining, that might affect gunpowder-based units. It might also make the terrain more miserable to move across. And we'll talk about terrain degradation because that might actually play a role into that. I'm not 100% certain at the moment. But weather will change certain things like view distance, stuff like that, fog. We'll balance it out so it's not too cancer. As long as it's fun, it'll stay in the game. If it's not fun, it gets tossed. You know the gists. Dynamic map effects. This refers to the fact that the map I do want to have I hate this buzzword. I wrote it down and I erased it 3 times because I hate it, but it's something I've heard before. It's called Levolution. Cringe. But I like the idea of the map being able to change. If you remember in the old Command & Conquer games, when a tank would shoot at the ground, there'd be like craters and stuff that would open up and burn and scorch marks and stuff. And I want the terrain and the battlefield to be scarred. So as units fight over these tiles, the tiles on the tactical map as well as the combat scene map, which I'll show you in a bit, actually get damaged, bodies start appearing, blood, and all that. And I want it to actually affect how the tile behaves in game. So muddier tiles, the tiles that have been fought over the most, get very difficult to move over. You'll see that I've represented some of this, specifically utilizing the environmental mechanic of fire. Some of you might be wise enough to know what inspired me with the fire. Oh, fire mechanics are such a great idea. I don't even know why nobody thinks about those things, but it's a wonderful idea. And so I thought fire mechanic would be kind of cool. Not, of course, to do it too badly, but it could add some interesting effects. Maybe smoke or other things might play with fog of war, as well as do some morale damage and stuff. By the way, nope, that's combat mechanics. We're sticking to environmental. Let's not talk about health mechanics yet. So yeah, that's a brief touch-up on fire. And I do want fire to play a role in burning things, whether it's little urban sections, and that will also, again, affect the actual combat scene tiles. I really can't wait to show you the combat scenes. Those are going to be so cool. So let's keep plowing through this. And yeah, that's battlefield scarring and degradation. There'll be different types of scarring. Not just, muddy terrain or scorch marks and stuff like that, but maybe some craters from cannons or some spells and cool stuff like that. Excuse me. I don't know why, but I got something in my throat, like a frog in there. Alright, so now let's touch up on the combat mechanics. Now, we already mentioned ranged units, but melee units, pretty simple. There's some ideas I want to experiment with. However, we're going to put a pin in those experimentations for now, because that could... When experimenting with adding mechanics, especially with something so grandiose as this, the more stuff you add, the very breaky things get very quickly. So you gotta be careful, because I had some ideas on, what happens if a melee unit is engaged with 2 other melee units. I long ago threw out the idea of directionals. It's always a thing that I was like, yes, an octi-directional system. That sounds great. Octi-directional, says Kibs. And then he implemented it in a test on Tabletop Sim. And then it was like, oh, that's awful. That was miserable. Octi-directionals sound cute on paper, but in actuality, they're absolutely cringe. The idea behind an octi-directional, by the way, Chad, is that there's the forward squares, right? 1, 2, 3. And then there's flank squares, and then there's the rear square, which does, if you get attacked from those sections, it gets really cancer. The issue is determining which angle the thing is aiming at, and all sorts of other things. That was just a silly idea. One of those ideas you get, and you're like, oh, that sounds great in your head, and then you're try it, and you're like, holy crap, that was awful. But yeah. And so back to ranged units and artillery, because melee is pretty simple. We'll get to the nitty-gritty of different formation systems that I want to implement as well. Like I mentioned with ranged units, they'll be able to shoot almost at any range. The tricky part becomes with the presentation of the combat scenes, which we'll again talk to in a second. Because if, for instance, let's say this rifle group decides to fire at that unit there, and there's no guys there, assuming they're within range, right? Probably not, because, short range, but, whatever. Let's say they do. How is that represented in the combat scene? That's a tricky question, because the combat scenes, which we'll just take a quick look at because it is relevant, is where it takes place here. Now, there's a couple ideas I had where it's like we do a divider to represent the cannons on one side, and I've seen other games do that too. One notable one is Advanced Wars that comes to mind, but that just brings in a whole lot of other slew of questions, and we're going to have to figure that out down the line. Now, there's been other questions about monstrous units and, back up. You didn't hear me say that. Shh. Spoilers. Cavalry and beasts of war, so to speak, like terrible DLC for Rome 2. Like war dogs or puppies. Horses. Yes, big puppies. Bigger puppies. Horses, or let's say giant mounted cavalry or cavalry. I meant to say crabs, but okay. Okay. All right. Having a rough time today, see? And so, yes, we do have those. I just didn't want to commission any more tiles for those, or test pieces for those, because this project got expensive. We'll talk about that later. But yes, there is cavalry, and the idea is that there's different unit archetypes like that can move around and do a lot more damage, and things like spear units and other like that will be a bit of a problem depending on if they're in formation or if they're already engaged in melee. Because that's the one thing I wanted to touch up on again. If a unit's engaged in melee, I want to say that if another unit joins in and attacking that unit that is engaged, that they'll get a bonus because it's already being engaged. That's a simple tabletop like RPG element that a lot of RPGs use, that where it's like, okay, one unit's tied up in combat. If another character shows up, they get a bonus because technically they're being attacked on two sides. That might actually work. On theory, on paper, right? It might get a little tricky, but we'll have to wait and see. The next thing is war spells. So I do want magic to remain part of the game, because magic is a huge part of this universe, even though mages are extremely rare. So yes, there will be magic in the warfare system. Now, warfare magic is not the same as the regular magic. And I need to stress that, because it gets a little tricky. Especially when I had to work on the lore for that kind of stuff, and I was like, okay, why the hell couldn't Rhea call down a fucking, like, beam from the heavens to burn away, like, an entire regiment of units in the regular combat? And there's a lot of stuff I had to do in terms of writing to expand the lore and how magic worked, and that was part of the Lore Calamity update, which was a huge part of the expansion of the recent lore stuff I did. And I can't talk about any of that, but just know that, because it's spoilers. But just know I've already addressed that issue. And so we actually have a supplement as to why you can't use warfare magic, or like the big spells, in regular combat encounters. There needs to be a lore explanation. It matters, because that's just kind of silly. Like, why wouldn't you use a ridiculously powerful spell to obliterate your enemies? You know? It's just a silly thing. That took a lot of writing, but we managed to do it. And the next thing we're moving on to is, and yes, War Magic will be its own progression system. There is a progression system based around this quote-unquote mini-game. It's a Kib game. It got fat. Like anything. It got a little bloated and I had to cut it down a bit. But yes, War Magic and stuff will be able to progress and be researched and advanced, because it is technically, magic is a technology in this universe. It's basically a science. Think of it that way. Hero units. So hero units, you can see we have little firstborn Rhea right there, barely covered in armor. In fact, basically a walking target. And you can embed heroes into units. Now, I absolutely loathe the idea of a single character slaughtering an entire regiment by themselves, because that's absolutely hilariously unrealistic. And that wouldn't make sense in a narrative aspect when you transition to the regular combat system and you see Rhea struggling to deal with like 2 guys at a time versus like an entire regiment. So that's absolutely stupid. Every hero unit, will have their own elite retinue. So they will be protected by the best of the best. In the case of Rhea, because they're part of the Astrian Empire, I'm thinking of allowing the player to be able to choose the special unit types that they're embedded with, maybe even actually maybe be able to put them on mounted cavalry and stuff like that, or perhaps like use Celestial Templars or the Elite Palatina Guard or something like that. So just give a cool idea on that. No, I did clutch that out of the corner. I'm not a fan of Dynasty Warrior, I see. I'm just not a fan of like one character slaughtering an entire army by themselves. Because it just doesn't make sense in a gameplay aspect nor a story aspect, especially if you're transitioning to the regular combat. Don't get me wrong, heroes will affect and be a huge bonus to a unit, but they're not the be all and end all because the warfare mode's about the armies clashing. It's not supposed to be hyper fixated on an individual character somehow wiping out an entire army by themselves, because that doesn't happen on Terrestria. If Rhea tried to do that, she would be a trampled, broken pile of red paste. Because that's not going to go over very well. Now, moving past hero units, monstrous units. So, you probably saw we have a Giant of Budenois. Now, why are the Giants of Budenois fighting next to Shoyo warriors who are fighting the Astrian Empire? I did this purely because these cultures are all from far fetches of the corner and barely have any interaction with the Astrian Empire, purely because I didn't want to spoil anything. So that's why you're seeing these weird cultures clashing with Astrian forces, because odds are, I mean, it's not very likely. It's not, they're very far away. I don't even know how the Giants... I don't even want to know. That's literally on the opposite side of the planet, but whatever. I wanted to show them just so you can get an idea, because I do have intentions to do other monstrous unit stuff, but I've been kind of keeping a lot of the fantastical beings and creatures kind of under wraps, for good reason. So there we have giants, and giants will and stuff will be represented by larger icons. Now, always the tricky part, right? Bear in mind, I threw this together, and these are super miniaturized. I'm sure Sal will have a fit about it later, because technically these images are massive, but I shrunk them down so that they look like I can actually see stuff where it is. But yeah, that's too big. And he's got little bare tootsies. That bothers me somehow. And supply trains. I did mention about ammunition and stuff, and I'm a little tiptoey on that, guys. I'm a little tiptoey, you know? I'm a little skeptical about the whole, like, okay, it can resupply ammo or the ammo mechanic. I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. A part of me goes like, ooh, ammo mechanic, that sounds kind of cool. Another part of me goes like, I can see that being, like, absolutely pointless or be absolutely cancerous. And I'm having a difficult time seeing the practicality behind that and sense of game logic. Remember, I'm juggling 3 major ideas. I'm juggling lore, I'm juggling game logic, and I'm also juggling, I forgot the third element. That's not a good sign. That's not a good... Narrative, gameplay, and... God, what's the third thing? Oh well, it slipped my mind. It's gonna be that thing that, you forget in the mixture and you're like, oh shit. But basically, the most important aspects are game logic and lore, because you need to tie the two together to be very cohesive. If it doesn't make sense, then it just seems to fall apart, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, for example, if you make the ammo trains a part of the game, and it turns out to be not fun, and you force it in for a narrative lore aspect, you're now gimping the gameplay. And you always got to remember, when making a video game, the core fundamental rule is that the game should be fun. Yeah, I think that was number 3. I think I just remembered that. But yeah, the game should always be fun first. So game logic supersedes all else. It always does, and it always has. Every good game has always realized that factor. But it's always a thing that I do want to implement. That's why it's important, because lore matters to me a lot, because I fucking spent a lot of time writing this stuff. And it would be a shame not to use it, you know what I'm saying? That's why I put a lot of asterisks on my notes next to the supply train thing, because I know it was one of the suggestions by actually one of the people who donate money to us in the Chamber of Squeakrits. And I like, on paper, I like the idea, but it's one of those things where it's like, it's just, okay, let's imagine this for a second. Let's say that, fuck, we'll make a little mark here, right? let's say this little square here is an ammo spot, right? The cannon runs out of ammo. Now you need to run the cannon all the way back to get more ammo and then run it back. And by then, like, how many turns is that going to take? Now, that boils down to movement and how turn economy works, but I just don't see that being particularly fun. Like, it's like, okay, I got my cannon finally spot, it fires, and then it runs out of ammo, and like, I gotta wheel it back. And by the time it wheeled it back, everybody's, like, moved on, and they're all over there now. And so that's the thing that I see is very problematic with that design. It just doesn't make a lot of sense in a game logic sense. And narratively, yeah, of course they need to reload their cannons and their guns and their bows and their quivers and shit. But, like, that's kind of cancer. So we'll see, we'll see. And yes, progression systems. It wouldn't be a fucking RPG if you didn't have a progression system, because that is the definition of RPG these days. Numbers that go up mean good, yes. So I'm a little bit tismy, and I've always loved the idea of individual unit commanders being able to level up. So every unit has its own value. You don't just treat this poor little swordsman over here that's getting his ass pounded like he's just a throwaway unit. This unit's got maybe its own veterancy and unique abilities or something like that. It's an idea I'm toying with again because it's one of those things where it's like, it on paper sounds very promising. It's also one of those things that could turn out to be like, you barely do anything with it. And that's my fear. Because, again, I need to touch back to the idea of the warfare mode. The warfare mode exists to specifically enhance, like, big giant decisions. And so that's what it's all about. And so it's like, okay, these battle things are going to happen. Like, these big battles are going to happen, and there's going to be probably quite a few of them, I would say, in the game. But it's not going to be like a Total War game where there's like bajillions of them, right? So it's all about making it matter. And that's why I've specifically... Okay, I can't really say that. Maybe you can. Pondering. Yeah, I can. Maybe. Yes. Yes, I can. That's not a spoiler. I'm squinting my eyes. So, let's say the heiress-to-be has her own legionary force, right? That legionary force, kind of like Star Wars, actually. You know, the 501st was attached to Anakin. Think of it kind of in a similar aspect to that, yeah. And so you have a dedicated army that you can sort of grow. Now, there's other armies and stuff, of course, within the Empire. The Empire's gargantuan. It's about the size of friggin' Europe, and it encompasses a multitude of different cultures. It's got a ton of other dudes, but you have your own like little personal army for doing stuff, and that's what you control directly, and that's the idea behind that. Yeah, I feel good about that. I feel good. I feel like I haven't given anything away. I feel like I'm just simply explaining why you'd care about an individual commanding unit, because it's part of that army. It might get a little tismy if it was a Total War game. God, it would be cool if it was, wasn't it? Wouldn't it? Oh, it'd be sick. Progression systems include War Magi, which we briefly discussed. The idea that you'll unlock different war spells or different mage retinues or something like that you can get from other cultures if you make certain alliances, deals, or pacts. I like the idea of that. Well, I love the Celestial Order and how absolutely spurgy those little shits are. I do like the idea of other religions that I've created, like the Astrian Conclave or the Cardovian Runics. Like, there's a lot of other magic systems in this universe, and they're really fucking cool. And I want the player to be able to play with at least a fair bit of them, even though you play as an Astrian for the most part, and you get the celestial magic. But it would be cool to play with the other magics, you know what I mean? I like the idea of that. And so that's one way to be able to access the unique spells and abilities of other cultures and religions. Right. And so another thing to touch upon is health. So there's kind of like an idea of two different health systems in this game. There's the unit health, which each model represents a single health point, because every unit has 1 HP, and like your units maybe have like 2 plus, you know, their armor stat or whatever. And so that way, that's how it's sort of going to play into the calculations. And so that's my idea behind that. So it's like, okay, let's say Rhea's unit's like 200 soldiers strong, right? That's 200 HP, more or less. Every point being a soldier, and every soldier maybe having 1 pip of armor or something like that. And that has a chance to deduct from the attack of the other unit. That's kind of my line of thinking when it comes down to the calculations behind that. So, and I like the idea of that. We're going to have to see how the calculations work once it actually is in proper play. But I have good confidence in that system. The second tertiary health bar, and maybe the most important of all health bar, is the morale bar. Now, why do you ask, Kib? Is the morale bar, or chat? I'm Kib. The morale bar is the tertiary aspect, right? The thing is, the morale bar is an important aspect. But the thing is, well, historically, in all my studies, combat in reality didn't involve units wiping each other out, generally. Generally, units would make contact, they'd fight for a little bit, and they'd be like, I'm scared and I want to leave. I don't want to die. And that's kind of what happened. Like, people just sort of ran a lot. Even until they were, like, specifically, like, really well trained, and even then, only a certain amount of, like, stress could a unit maintain before it would immediately break or run and be like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this anymore. For game logic, we might have to tweak that a little bit, that variable. So instead of it being like 5% to 10% casualties before units start panicking, it might be a little bit higher than that. Just for a gameplay sense, because routing is going to be an interesting thing in this game, programmatically, because we're going to have to handle that. Like, how does a unit route, right? So, for example, if this unit routes, this unit right here, right? If it routes down, that sucks. Balls. Because it's now cut off from the other allied troops. That's going to be a bit annoying to deal with. So, going to have to see how that's going to work in terms of, because that's partially a little bit of AI, because the AI is mostly like, okay, it wants to leave. So player loses control for a turn or 2 turns, depending on the unit's damage, the amount of morale it took a hit to, and whether it can be rallied by an allied unit or be rallied by a hero unit ability or something like that. So that's something that I'm kind of finicky on. That's going to boil down to balance. But I do like the idea of morale because I don't want like units to absolutely wipe each other out. Because generally speaking, most people don't want to die. Most people want to live. And I like the idea that, units will route, sometimes come back, or just route off the field. It makes it feel nice and real to me. And I want Terrestria, even though it's a fictional world, to be fairly realistic and grounded. Even if it is fantasy, got magic and stuff. That's the idea behind morale. And that's the other health aspect. Now, for the next course, which is a very delicious thing. You need to look at this. Focus. Here it is. So, let's pretend for just a second this unit here is engaging that unit there. You will then, of course, or Ria's unit here, and engages that unit there. That makes more sense narratively because Ria's right there. So, combat I wanted it to be interesting. I didn't want the little pieces or the chess pieces, so to speak, to bonk each other, and that's kind of it. That's not very exciting, if you will. I thought it'd be more fun and interesting if we could show you what was happening based on what abilities your officer has set up. So whether they're using like some type of special formation or something like that. That's why I also differentiated the Shoyo forces here. They didn't get an officer, mostly because I didn't want to pay for one. Because it's just for presentation, I just gave them a bannerman. And so, like, okay, if a unit without an officer, let's say its officer was killed or something like that, they don't get any formation bonuses. Maybe they take a penalty. Maybe they get like some crappy formation something. And so now their unit's going to have a serious disadvantage when facing those heavy Astrian infantry on the left, you see, because those are heavy. Those are Tonk boys. They're very well shingled. Perfect shingled armor. Kawaii des. Look at that. And so that's the idea behind that. And so, but yeah, back to the, because there's so much to talk about here, actually, now that I look at it more. But yeah, so the units will actually bonk into each other, and they'll hit each other and whatnot. There'll be some unique kill animations. Otherwise, it would look really boring if they just swung swords at each other, and then one of their 2 of them fall over or something like that. That'd be kind of lame. So like, okay, Units will have maybe a couple unique kill animations, so that way you'll kind of want to watch it because there'll be something to actually watch, something cool to actually see. You'll get some unique kill animations for other units fighting other units, and it'll be a nice little showing of what's actually happening for the dice rolls and all that. And so you'll get to see that. And I do want a chance for the officer, bannerman, musician, and as well as the hero to be incapacitated. Hero has to be incapacitated because, well, if the hero dies in this mode, that would be really fucking awful to write because I'd be writing 3,000 different alternate games by the end of the warfare mode. And I'll be writing for a very long time if that occurs. But I do like the idea that the officers could be potentially killed. So then you'd have to get new officers, which makes you kind of want to keep them alive because, well, they're kind of important. And maybe different formations give different bonuses to officer and the core units. So if you lose a musician, maybe it does damage to the units like movement or marching. A banner maybe does damage to the unit's morale because their standard was trampled and destroyed or something like that. And things like that. But yeah, I'm going to start transitioning into a little bit of questions because that's actually a really good one and I don't want that one to slip by. Even though I wasn't going to do questions right away, because that's a good one. Will scattered close formation affect the effectiveness of artillery attacks? Yes, it will. Yes, it will. It very much will. If, for example, this tight clustered Astrian formation here against cannon shot or some sort of large artillery is going to be absolutely brutal. It's going to be absolutely devastating to that unit versus the Shoyu units who don't even have an officer. So, just because the unit has an officer doesn't necessarily make the unit like, I'm invincible. No sirree. Now, so this is, by the way, the backdrop here is a forest tile. So this is if the combat was taking place in the forest tile. There'll be different tiles to represent different, spaces, whether it's an urban section, a wall section, or something like that. There's also something I haven't talked about, like the idea of siege equipment and how that works. That's a more advanced mechanic, and I don't think that's particularly useful at the moment to talk about, but I like the idea of having those kinds of things at play, because I don't want it just to be a field battle, because that's super boring, right? There'll be other things. There'll be lots of other cool things and things I can't talk about until I'll never be able to talk about. In fact, you'll see it before I get to talk about it. But yeah, and so here's another scene I sort of put together with the art pieces of some of the monstrous units, and I was like, okay, so you can get to see like this is an example. It's actually the same tile, by the way, more or less, just with some altercations to it. This is the tile after being maneuvered on for a little bit. Combat's taking place over a couple turns on this, so it's starting to get muddy, and so you'll get to see that visualized on the combat scenes. You can also see that the Astrians have taken some casualties, and so there'll be some corpses lining the ground there. Also, feel proud about how I placed that one. That one looks good. I've been enjoying that particular corpse too much. I like to prop him up against things like, hey, look, he did. And I use the blood effect and put that behind it. It looks really nice. I was surprised how well these turned out. These looks awesome, really. But this is just an idea. So you got some cannons against some giants. I'm sure the cannons will do well as long as they hit the giants. But that's the idea, right? And so I like the idea that the tiles get damaged. And then that'll again be represented on the tactical map as well. Otherwise, how the hell are you going to tell what's going on where? And then I'll push into the third tile here. And I do, again, want to point out, this is it's super muddy. There's even pools of water and lots of blood and corpses everywhere. Just scattered about. And this, I didn't put any units on this one because I wanted to demonstrate, like, a tile that's been fought over. If you fight over it again, we'll still have those corpses. I love the idea of persistent scarring. I've always wanted that to be something in this game. In fact, I've always been a big proponent of persistent, like, battlefield scarring or shipwrecks or like corpses and stuff, because I think it's cool. I think it's fun. You'll notice in the regular combat mode, we have something like that too. Last time we talked about that. But there's one factor, is generally towns will clean up after themselves. So if there's a big fight, they're not just going to leave the corpses laying around. That'd be weird. The little kids are playing over the dead body of some dead, like, dead baron that you killed, and like, like, maybe they would pick that up and, I don't know, toss it in the dumpster or something. You know what I'm saying? I've got some other pictures to go through real quick. And then we can start answering more questions as well. Let's get to the super chats. Here's a bunch of pictures of the sprites. This is just a quick reminder of what the sprites look like in game so far. And one thing I wanted to point out is the idea of this, right? The mode itself needed to be able to recycle a lot of assets already because I'm funding this out of my pocket. And I'm basically also crowdsourcing it from you guys. And I chose not to opt in for a publisher because I really can't fucking stand the idea of being bossed around and be like, you need this, you need to be more. No, fuck off. I'm gonna do it my way, and it's gonna be my vision completely. Like we're not playing that stupid game. No fucking forced in, half-assed mechanics because it's popular. Ugh, disgusting. And so yeah, these are the idea of the sprites. So it'll be recycling the same sprites. So from this like style, because for the combat cutscenes. Now the tactical map will need completely new assets, no matter what. Technically, these scenes might be able to recycle some of the actual tiles from the base game, but generally going to have to be maybe specialized construction behind the set pieces themselves. Fortunately, there'll only be. It's not going to be as crazy as actually doing the combat test zone we're working on now, which is a bajillion assets. Holy crap. It's insane. And so, yeah, the sprites are absolutely gorgeous, though. They're well animated, done by an absolute professional badass named Cashew. We've got the best of the friggin' best. Now, I wanted to show this art piece. This is a really old concept, actually, early on, because this is back when it was like, we're going to have different outfits available for characters. And then we're like, oh my god, it takes, like, oh, I don't even know. I don't even want to talk about it. It costs a lot of money to make one character. But that does not mean I've dismissed or thrown out the idea of this. Warfare armor. I like the idea that they'll actually, characters will change, and so it's been in my idea that maybe money we can add a little bit of armor, because technically you can customize your characters and their gear and stuff like that. But the thing is, we can't represent that on the sprite because animation costs. It's astronomical. If it was a 3D game, you could just simply put it on and then it clips through their arms and it would look weird and silly, but it would work more or less. In a sprite-based game, it'd have to be reanimated every time with every combination. That gets a little messy. Here we've got King Kanar. That's from the Kanar series. I figured I'd show him off. He's a badass. That series is still coming along. Chugging along, though I think the music video will be done before the Kanar is. That's okay. And here's an example of UIV4. It's not perfect example, by the way. It's missing a few elements. Disco's version is actually much better, but that's in-game. This is just a bunch of placeholder art assets to give you an idea of the UI. And I wanted to mention, I wanted to recycle this. So, the different units and officers will have their portraits up there. And so that's the idea behind that. And, then the unit abilities and stuff. I want to keep the same layout as UIV4, with the idea that it's going to be more or less the same. So that way when you transition into a different game, the game mode, it's not going to be an absolute pain for you. Hold on with the questions, Boog. Hold on. Now, I need to mention this because we mentioned this before and it's still a thing. Most people probably forgot about it, but I never forget about this. Micro squares. Why are micro squares important? They're amazing. They do something that most games don't do. The ability to move things very finicky around stuff. Like moving inside of buildings with micro squares. Oh my god, it's like a godsend. It's like God reached down and was like, you can now move closer to the wall than ever before. Nice. Now the walls don't take up nearly as much space, neither does the other various items inside, and allows for a lot more maneuvering options. The micro squares will not be a part of the warfare mode. That's why I wanted to mention it. Because micro squares are for individual based combat. There's no real reason for them to be in warfare mode because it's more so, generalized. Like this square is a large chunk of grass. This square is a large chunk of hill, stuff like that. Next up, that's pixely. Combat presentation. Now, this cinematic, again, in order to keep it kind of samey, we're going to probably end up reusing the idea behind this. Just like the different commander units will be up there, maybe. We'll see how that works. So that's the idea behind this. We got to figure out a way to do presentation. Maybe move the clouds part apart or something like that. We'll figure out the exact methodology. This is just a quick test thing that we put together. Ignore the thousands of Rias that are collected everywhere. She has become a measurement tool for our game right now. She's used to determine the height of buildings, the height of other characters and other races. Ria has literally become a measuring stick, both for concept art and in-game art assets. Kind of hilarious. Here's an example of an animation playing out. Now, the one thing I do want to point out is notice how long that takes to play out. This is just one of her more advanced melee combat skills being demonstrated in this. This is very old, because you notice the set piece here is like super old art. Like, it looks way better now. This was ancient. But yeah, so that's the idea behind that. Like, poke, poke, poke. You know? It's like, okay, how much time does that take to process between animations? Because we can't have that take forever, because it actually gets super annoying based on closed testing and just responses to other things that I've looked at. Like, okay, let's say like the animation takes 5 seconds. That's 1,000, 2 1,000. You know? And like that can be annoying. So obviously we need to make sure the animations are short and sweet and super cool. That's why the idea of kill animations is something I'm thinking about experimenting with. That is going to hurt the Kib wallet badly, but it might be extremely worth it. It would be fucking cool. But sometimes the wallet is not that thunk. Not that thick. We'll see. We'll do some experimentation with that. That is on the to-do list. Right, now that I've gotten through all that, let me get through super chats, and then we can start talking about individual things. Tango Hotels rated us with a party 24. Welcome. I didn't even see that. I didn't even know what a raid is. Oh, wait, that's the thing when people attack. No, that's the thing when people come to your stream. I think Discord rating, I'm like, oh, shit, here we go again. So let's get through these supers, shall we? Let's see, 37 minutes ago, Getty donated $5. Can't stay, so I'll probably watch the VOD later. But great to see more about the game. And can't wait for even more. Me too, trust me. I can't wait till it's actually, like, presentable once we get the gameplay further enough along. It's going to be exciting. Get a real haircut donates a bit to say, and thank you for the donation. Donates a bit to say, love hearing more about the game, Kibs. That makes me happy, actually. That makes me very happy. Nix, and thank you for the donation. Nix donates £5. That's euros. My eyes don't work. Me give you money. You give me or game. You give game or cheeks. Well, game's in development, so we're gonna have to put a pin in that desire for just a moment. Thank you for the raid, Tango Hotel. Appreciate it. Sorry, I only have 2 monitors at the moment because of my setup, and sorry for the shitty mic. We'll get a better one when we're back home again. Kyle donates a very generous £50. Thank you very much. Says, got paid today. Here, more money for your game. The game art looked good. Will you be talking about a demo on your game today? A demo. Actually, we can talk about something like a demo. It's called alpha testing and beta testing. But there is a planned demo once the game's done to accompany the game at launch. Because making demos is actually really easy. Basically just cutting a good section of the game and making it playable. Without revealing too much, but giving people a nice little sample of what the game has to offer. Thank you for the donation. Adeptus Mumble donates $5. Say, here's money for the game. Take money for game. I will. I will. Very generous. Thank you. Umrit donates 5 BGNs. Not sure what a BGN is. Baldur's Gate money. There we go. Since you have Dark Souls games, will you try Neo? Is a bit faster. Since you hate Dark Souls games, is what I think you meant. I'm not a big fan of the Dark Souls game. I actually tried Neo. It was okay. I don't know. Those kinds of games, like if they were cooperative, I wouldn't probably mind them so much. Oops, excuse me. Like, not through the janky cooperative system 3 has. You're not tricking me. Thank you for the donation, by the way. Appreciate it. Now, I did mention No, I feel bad. Maybe I shouldn't tell you. No, maybe we won't tell you that. I think that'll just make people feel guilty. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. Okay. Let's see. So, the tactical map, chat. What are your thoughts and opinions? Bear in mind, this looks nothing like what it's going to look like when we actually get it done. This is me putting this together and commissioning probably too much art for this presentation, to be perfectly honest with you. But I thought it would be worthwhile to at least show you this. I'm not sure if I can afford to do something like this again. Because I technically could for the base combat system as well, though it also takes resources and time out of the other parts. It took a lot of resources actually out of last month to develop this. But I feel like it was worth it because I feel like it helps bring people into the idea of the game and gets them excited for it too. Or gets them at least interested, if nothing else. There's no point being excited, okay? You need to wait. Oh, gosh darn it. Let's see. What's the other thing? I mentioned something I was going to explain, and then I didn't explain it. I missed something. It was in regards to something about the tactical map? Chat, I was supposed to tell you something. You gotta help me out here, chat. What are we forgetting to tell you guys? What did I say I was going to elaborate, but I haven't? Because I'm pretty sure I said a few minutes ago I was going to elaborate something for you guys. And I'm sitting here going like, I can't remember what it was. You should make the ground red from all the blood. Hamster, were you even listening to the presentation? Yes, the ground will get red after fighting has happened over. It will be bloody. It's a bloody game. There's blood and there's dead bodies and stuff like that. We're not afraid to get a little dirty. Get a haircut donates 5 bits to say most engaging and hyped presentation of E3. This is a presentation for E3. I stayed up all friggin' day putting this thing together. Oh god, I'm gonna have to stay up all night working. But it was well worth it. I was already a day late because I had to house sit. I had to make sure we get it done. Like, if I didn't do it, I was already mad that I missed. I was supposed to do it Monday. And I was like, come hell or high water, I'm doing it today. I don't care how little I'm sleeping today. So I can sleep all day tomorrow. That's fine. Just need to get this done, or I'll be mad at myself for missing another day. Glow in the Dark donates a very generous $20. Thank you. To say, when you get the game functional, you could go for bank loan. You have proof of concept, and you can leverage your Discord and/or donations to show interest in game or crowdfund to reach finish line in the next decade. In the next decade? Hold on a minute. This isn't gonna take a decade. If it takes a decade, I'm gonna be mad. I'm gonna be really mad. Oh, that's not even funny. You're giving me anxiety just thinking about it. A decade? Oh no, I've been working on this my whole life, and like only the last few years we've actually made progress. Well, last like 2 years. And we've made a lot of progress. It was all about just getting going and getting going in the right direction. Once we got going, like damn, things just came together, and they're just coming together, thing after thing after thing after thing. It's all coming together, and it's slowly coming together. Like every patch, they're not really patches. Every build, like this week is the launch of the new build in-house. Sorry. Oh, that's what you asked earlier. I was going to explain, but I totally missed it. I didn't see anybody ask again. Demo. You asked demo. Yes, there will be a demo. But first, there's going to be closed testing. Now, the prerequisite for closed testing is not the warfare mode. The warfare mode is actually something I'm working on right now. The programmers have nothing to do with this right now. It's the other writing and designers who are going to help me basically clean this up, work on it more, tweak it, expand it, cut it down a little bit, expand it, tweak it some more, until we get it just right. And then we tether it to the game. Tethering's the annoying thing. It's like, okay, how do you access it? The war camp thing. Thank God I had the foresight to design that in advance, right? Phew, dodged a bullet. And that's thank God for the party camp system. Whew, dodged another bullet. Kibs is thinking ahead. Kibs is thinking ahead. That was designed like 2 years ago. Aha! Advanced. This was all originally intended anyways. Just finally getting around to tethering it together and making it. Because I finally Can finally work on this now. Triple game takes 5 years with teams of hundreds of people. It does. But that's also design bloat, and they have other problems. We may not have those kinds of problems. 5 years, don't say that. Now, we are bottlenecked. After searching and searching for more animator help, I couldn't find a single animator who was capable of keeping up with Cashew. All of them were good people. All of them tried their best. Sadly, none of them made the cut. I can't find anyone as skilled as Cashew, sadly. And I've almost given up looking at the moment. Taking a break from looking, because even if I did find the animator, I'm at the point now in the development process where I'm pushed to my absolute limit. I spend everything I make now. I have no money to my name anymore. Smart. And if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't even be going as fast as we're going now. Because it is thanks to you guys that we've gotten this far. Very much so. We're spending at maximum capacity. That's why I'm working not double shift. Oh god, that'd be like the entire day, that'd be 20 hours. I'm working an additional contract right now. Because we need the extra months. We're plowing through it though, we're making progress. Oh, I need another sip of coffee. Ugh. Get the Bernie throats. Tingly. Okay. Get a Real Haircut donates a bit to say Astria. At time to kill. At time to kill. I'm confused. You also misspelled Astria, but I forgive you because you gave me a penny. When you get the game function... Did I read that? Yeah, no, I did. Okay. I thought I missed something. I'll donate £2 to say, when do you think you will have the game release? Oh, I wish I had an answer for that one. But the real answer is this, because I do not want to lie to you. We have different goals and deadlines we want to meet. The first major goal that I want to breach is the combat build. And what that entails is basically getting the combat build to a presentable state that I can begin recruiting and enlisting the people who donated help first, because that's going to be closed testing. We need a couple of testers for that. And so the people who donate gets access to that. And remember, if you've ever donated or if you donated in the past, be sure to DM me via Discord. You get access for the Chamber of Squeakers. It doesn't matter if it's a penny. I don't care. If you gave anything at all, you get access to that. It's basically us just conscripting a closed testing group. And then when we're ready to expand testing, we'll move on to the more expanded testing phase, where it'll be more open, and it'll be moving from closed testing to open. The closed testing is to find all the things that we just sort of missed, or if we missed anything, and try to correct those as well as crush out any bugs, and then start making it look very presentable. Once that closed testing phase has been completed, then we'll be transitioning into the glorious open testing, when people will break the ever-living shit out of everything I know and love. Oh, God have mercy on Tyler's soul. He's the lead programmer after all. I feel bad for him. That's not my problem. Oh, no, I'm kidding. There's actually some stuff I will have to set up in regards to how to process bug reports and stuff like that. Because that's super important. And remember, when you do testing, which is down the line, and again, hopefully this year, I feel like I've wandered away from the subject of your question a little bit. Because the idea is that this year, I want the combat build to at least be at minimum in close testing phase. That way, we can begin getting feedback and making sure that we're on the right track. The people are like, this is fun. Or like, actually, this isn't that fun. And be like, oh, why? What isn't fun? What do we need to fix? We need to address it sooner than later. And as soon as possible. But at the same time, it has to be presentable enough that when we present it to the close testing people, because we need to present it to them, and we need to not tell them a damn thing. They need to play it, and they need to figure out how it works on their own. And if they can't figure it out, that means we fucked up. And we need to fix that. Better tooltips, better, user interface updates, or things like that. Make it more, what's the naughty word? Make it more accessible is what I'm about to say. But to a degree, yes. Make it so that the game doesn't require someone else to teach them. The game should be able to teach them how to play on its own. Because it should be approachable. Regardless of how complex the systems are, it's all about making good tooltips. Good tooltip is a happy tooltip. I can't wait till the tooltip system is implemented. I don't think we have that in. I think that's on the to-do the to-do list, if I remember right. Because UIV4 is taking precedence. Because God help me, the contextual-based UI of UIV2, contextual UI was too much inspired by handheld thingies. Because I was like, ah, yes, my childhood memory. That seemed like a good idea. And it is. It actually works very well. Not for a computer game. For a computer game. We need a better interface. And I was like, fine, we'll study UIs. Studied a bunch of RPGs and like, these all suck. Studied an MMO and was like, wow, this is good actually. Then I realized MMO UIs are literally the most advanced thing I've ever seen in my life. And so I've been studying those little things for a while. They're really good though. If you're deciding to make a game, like especially an RPG, look at an MMO UI. They're meant to be played for a long time. So they have a lot of care behind their development. A lot of big brain shit going on behind the scenes there. Fascinating, actually. Well, in the dark donates $5 say, or oh, back up. Black1917 donates $2 say squeak. Thank you for the donation. Well, in the dark donates $5 say watch Cashew's stream. He does good. He does. He's amazing. Have you guys seen the giant? Here, you know what? You guys get to see the giant chant. You haven't seen it. I mean, you've seen what it looks like here, but you haven't seen the art portal. Let's not open that tab. Legends of Terrestria. Somebody called it Legends of Terraria, and it made suicide. That's cream. That's not even the same IP. That made me sad. Look at him. This is a much older version, though. He's come much further along than this, but look at the detail. This sprite is insane. Like, Rhea is already a gargantuan sprite. As far as RPG sprites go, she's basically a fighter sprite size. The giant is literally gargantuan. He's gonna be a bitch and a half to animate. I don't envy Cash. I admire his bravery. But yes, that is the giant sprite. It's quite good. I like it. I'm very happy with it. Get a real haircut. Oh no, I skipped one. Viking Kiwi donates 50 North Koreans to say, Kibs Grand X 20 kids. This game has been in the works for many generations. I swear to God. Don't give me... I'm already overstressing out by the fact that we missed... I can't remember. We missed a deadline on something, but I don't remember what it was for. And technically we're behind schedule this year. Because, like... everyone else is like, yeah, no, like, it happens. And, you know, I was the one who even said, like, yeah, no, it's going to happen sometimes. Like, don't beat yourself up, guys. And then there's me after the meeting going like, wow, everything's ending, everything. Oh, I'm stressing out. Like, I actually have gray hairs now, like little bits of them. It's like, come on. If you could just see it, if you could just play it. See, it first started with, like, if you could just see it, and now it's like, if you could just play it. It's always going to be something. Whatever. There's no winning. Get a Real Haircut donates a bit to say, Duke Nukem, A Time to Kill, was in development for 1,000,000 years, while the Olsen twins got old enough to voice the skanks. You're making me sad. Our game's not going to be in development hell. Don't say that. Don't jinx it, chat. What the hell? You're supposed to be like, oh, yes, consume product. And instead you're like, it's going to be in development hell. It's like, oh, no. Suicide time. Will in the Dark donates $5 say, you could put Cashew drawing assets up for game as promotion with his permission. At 10 times speed plus 4 hours can be much for some people. Can be too much for some people. I mean, we're doing everything we can to promote ourselves at the same time while also juggling the fact that we need to work on a game. I think, honestly, the game will speak volumes for itself. I have confidence in that. When people actually see it, when people actually get to play it, I have a supreme confidence in it that I'm like, yeah, no, you're going to play this and you're going to love it. You're going to want this thing. Better. I've spent my entire life on this thing. Don't disappoint me, Chet. I'm kidding. Nix donates generous $23.65. Says, there will be other mini games. Will there be other mini games? Fuck, I shouldn't have said the first thing. Yes, there will be, technically. As to what extent, boils down to a couple of factors. Money and time. The the philosophy behind the game and at Battle Damage Studios is that we don't cut corners. And we're principled, meaning we're not going to take money from outsiders. We're not going to do exclusivity deals in the sense of like, and by outsiders, I mean like corporate deals and stuff with like publishers. Because, well, technically speaking, I do believe at a certain point we'll be able to present this to a publisher and they'll be like, oh, hell yeah. And they would throw tons of fucking money at us. I have no doubt about that. I don't want that, though. I don't want what that means. I don't like the idea that someone else can tell me what to do in the sense that they can be like, cut the warfare mode thing because the kids won't like it. Like that kind of shit scares me. Or that storyline's too dark. You need to make it a little happier and cheer. I don't want to be told what to do. Like I want this vision to be what I have in my head and what the team makes of it. In the same sense that like I've learned to open up about my vision more and to also level it. Like to not be a Peter Molyneux because I am a visionary, and it's important to not be like those people. You got to study those failures, and you got to be like, okay, I don't want to be that. So when Salah first did Rhea, at first I was like, that is not at all what I had in mind for her, because I was like, I described her what I had in mind, and I remember like the original drawings I had made of her myself back when I was doing the art myself. I was like, she had like a full coat on and stuff. And then I saw this and was like, she's naked. And Salah was like, gave me an argument for like what I wanted in my head and like in my vision. I was like, you know what? It's no longer just my vision anymore. It is, but it's also more than that. It's the team's vision. It's become expanded. And yes, she may be half naked, but that doesn't matter. Oh god. Also, there's a certain benefit in being the underdog and staying indie. Because we are indie. There are so many games that go like, we're indie, and then they have a publisher, and I'm just like, that's not indie. If you have a publisher, you're not an independent developer. That's literally the fucking opposite. Literally, during the Steam Summer Sale, oh my god, I'm becoming a decrepit indie now. Fucking put me down, chat. Literally, fucking goddamn, I got actually triggered over something stupid. I was like, triggered. I saw, what was it? I saw on the Steam store page, it's like indie games, and I clicked on it, and like most of the games on it have publishers, and I'm like, these aren't indie. If they have publishers, they're not independent. Like they're not indie. Like these aren't indie games. Corporations are using the title indie to masquerade that so they can get sympathy bucks. You're not indie if you have a AA or a AAA publishing. Like, you're not independent. Oh my god, it bothers me. I don't know why that bothers me so much, but now that I'm independent and living day to day on fucking potatoes, like, I understand now. I understand. When I see Megacorp like EA or somebody or going like, we's indie, it's like, no, not with that kind of funding. I don't think so. Perhaps it's just me being overly crotchety about it, but it's still technically incorrect. But in regards to mini games, right? And besides that tangent, there is going to be one other at the very least, and I gave Bubbles the honor of spearheading the designs behind that. That is the fishing minigame. Now, some might ask, why the hell is there a fishing minigame? Kibs, you hate fishing minigames. I do. I actually really hate fishing minigames. But there's a legendary stream we did that rose a fuck ton of money, and I was like, it's kind of cancer, but wouldn't it be funny if we did that? And Bubbles was like, we should do a fishing minigame. I was like, you know what? We will. You're designing it, but we're doing it. Oh, God. And so that's how the fishing minigame. It was from the near fishing stream, the one we made like 4.5k or 5k or something like that on. Ridiculous. Ridiculous amount of super monies. It was a really good month. Heil donates £5 to say, get Arch to do a lore video on the world of Terrestria to advertise the book you're making in game. Making a book? I mean, I am, but not for you to read. Not for... That's called the Lore Bible, and it's not for your prying eyes. It's for me to guide myself on what not to do. Like, is there time travel? Can this magic spell do that? How does magic work? How does magic work in this culture? What are the rules and fundamental principles of magic? Like, how does the laws of physics work? More or less is basically what it is. That book isn't meant for user consumption. That's meant for the author to make sure that I don't break my own rules. It's important to operate in the rule set, which is why there's a specific rule set that the story's constructed around, so that they must adhere to it. Without that rule set, it just becomes a Deus Ex Machina. And the magic in the Mixers universe is very much not a Deus Machina. Not unless I fuck up, that is. I don't intend to do that. Alright, so. And, oh yeah, to answer your question, yes, we are working on that. The Legend of Kanar lore series is actually just that. I have artists working on the entire art for that, which is bleeding me dry a little bit. But it's also one of those things where if it gets done, oh my god, that would promote. But it's actually complementary material that will be released closer to the game's launch when there's more gameplay. So that's not going to be released for public consumption for a long time, even when it's done. But it will be released in a closed test thing, just so people can see it. Just like we're also doing preemptive series based on it, actually. It's fucking massive. I've dumped a lot of money into that. Like, there's Celeste's song, which is coming. We even have a singer and a composer, and they're putting together the music right now. It's really good. Then we have same composer literally doing the song, or he's going to be doing the song for the Sunken King. Should you see the art for that yet? It's really cool, but maybe you're not prepared for that art. Time travel. Blech. Sorry, I read that in advance. I gotta get the other super chats. Heil donates £5 to say, I read that. He didn't say that, but that's what I said. Get a Real Haircut donates a bit to say, Kibs becomes a contemporary Johnny Silverhands. Ah, the corporations, it triggers me. They do, though. Only when you're an independent, you're like, I'm working really hard, and then you see them go like, we're independent, we're the underdog. It's like, what? You're literally not, like, I don't mind them. It's just when they say they're the underdog that I have a problem. It's like, that's my shtick. I'm the undercat. Now, you said we get to playtest if we give money. Yes, when it's ready. But now that you've donated, you do need to know how. Because you do need to be in the right channel for that. Because it will be released in the Chamber of Squeakers in the Discord server. So, in the description of this video, and all the videos on this channel, and in the Twitch chat and the thing below, there is a link to the Discord server. Join the Discord server. Doesn't matter how much you donated, anything. If it was a penny on Twitch, or if it was a couple dollars on YouTube, you get permanent access to this room. Just don't break the rules on the Discord server. That's all I ask. Join the Discord server, and then DM me your receipt. Now be sure to black out any sort of personal information, like your name and stuff that you don't want, in case for whatever reason my account gets hacked. My current name is Invictus Kibs, though generally it's just Kibs. It's the person at the top with the Bickering room. It's part of a stupid Rome meme that we had a while ago, and I just haven't changed it. Because I triggered Greek Point, it was fun. And so I remain Invictus Kibs for now. It is a little cringy, but it's kind of funny. Now, next super chat. Yeah, I think I explained everything about it. Yeah, just DM me the receipt and then I'll give you access to them. Boog donates 20 pesos to say, time travel is a crutch. We'll use it. Time travel doesn't exist. Moving on to the next super chat. I hate the idea of time travel. No. There's a big... Okay. This is one thing of the lore Bible I did spoil ages ago, and I will remain spoiled. No time travel in this universe. Why? Because it's such an easy tool to just undo everything. Just like resurrection. Like, I made special rules about souls and the tethers between physical form and souls. Like, there's only so much that can actually take place between a soul and the physical form, between the ethereal and the mortal plane. Like, The reason for that is I wanted to make sure that characters couldn't come back from the willy-nilly dead for no particular reason, just because I want to undo that character's death. No. There's certain rules that need to be followed, and if there is any exception to those rules, there aren't any, technically, because there are specific rules about everything in that regard. How souls, the ethereal plane works, the different planes and as a whole, and the realms. Oh god, it took forever to write that shit. But it was well worth it, because I hate the idea of fucking, like, death has meaning, and it should always have meaning. Person dying is a huge thing, and should always be something dealt with relative care. Even if there's a lot of deaths or a few deaths, it doesn't matter. Just like time travel, which basically undoes death. Death is one of my favorite things. I didn't mean to say it like that, but it came out like that. It's a good thing, okay? It means people die, and characters change, and they have to deal with those changes. And that can be pretty hard. You can't walk that back. Hate that. Literally cheap. It's cheating. But that's my little tangent on that all over. So no time travel. Period. No time travel magic. Period. Kyle donates a generous £2 to say, you thinking about putting the lore book on Audible? Putting the lore book on Audible would make you commit seppuku. You'd listen to it and be like, this is the densest thing I've ever read. It is just a collection of various notes and lore rules. Like, it's not an easy read. It's actually very hard to read, because it's pretty heavy. It's not meant for user consumption, and that's the problem. Now, I wouldn't be opposed down the line prettying it up for you guys at some point, but the lore Bible could be useful if we ever released an RP book, because then it's like, okay, the lore Bible can explain how things work mechanically and functionally. And the lore Bible contains the Universal Bible, as well as the Terrestria Bible. Eh? What? That's a weird thing to read. I hate time travel. Boog, you triggered me by bringing that up. You triggered me. It just undoes sacrifice, and it bothers me to such a ridiculous degree. It's like the idea of, like, the friggin' Warhammer 40k crap. Like, our Primarchs just come back, and the Horus Heresy didn't really matter because everybody's okay, and they can all be redeemed for killing billions of people. There are some things that are not redeemable. That's just cartoonish. Rhea goes on a murderous rampage. That just makes her hot. You know what I mean? It's like, what? I did that for shock value. All right, let's see. Could you do a storyline show? What do you mean by that, Jonathan? Explain. I don't understand what you mean by storyline show. If I showed you the storyline for the game, that'd be a bit spoilery. I'm not doing that. So the Silmarillion. I wouldn't compare myself to Tolkien. That's a little bit ridiculous. He is way leagues above me. Way. Ours is a heavy read. Yes, that is true. But I'm no Tolkien. No. 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 No, that is way too presumptuous. Gabriel says, make the equivalent of the Fallout Bible down the line. Actually, my inspiration behind the lore Bible actually originates from Tiberian Sun's lore Bible. That was originally intended to be handed off to the next development team that would develop the next Tiberium Wars game. Fun fact, they sort of just didn't read it when they made the next game. Because Tiberium Wars is actually terrible, in my opinion, as far as lore goes. Because it just completely ignores the Bible and how, like, the biological changes of Tiberium works. And it's like, they're asking for spoilers. Oh, a few seconds ago, Get a Real Haircut says, the Bible is a historic cartoon, probably. Kibs 2021. Alright, let's look at the cool art again, okay? Look at this shit. I put this stuff together in Photoshop. I didn't paint it. I paid people to paint it, because I'm too retarded to paint. Look at how cool it looks. Giant's going like, I'm gonna club you. Rude. You thinking about putting lower... No, I read that already. Kib, you're fucking retarded. Isle donates £5 to say, good, the butterfly effect made me hate the idea. Time travel also was talk about the book you were. Wait, what? I feel like there's a comma repeated there. Good. The butterfly effect made me hate the idea of time travel. Also, was talk about the book you were thinking about selling, not the one for you only? The book I was thinking about selling. The RP book? I mean, I want to make one. The problem is I started working on one, and then I was like, this is a lot of work, and I don't have the time or resources for it. I need to spend time writing the lore for the game first. Because if I do that, I'm booked. I do want to make an RP book when I have time. Because I like the idea of a pen and paper for Terrestria. Fuck, I would love to GM that. That'd be so cool. I'd torture Arch in that. And Disco. And Bubbles. You're like, Kib, your universe is specifically out to get me. It's like, this is payback. Design an entire magic system to fuck with Arch. I like that. Disco and Barcher in chat. Actually, Girly Man coming back in fine is fine as it was built up from the very start with the stasis field, but not the other ones. Also, Kyle is more Martin than Tolkien. That was said intentionally, and that's rude. Because you know how I feel about Martin O'Donnell. Whoops, wrong person. George R. R. Martin. Martin O'Donnell is a different person. Black 1917, nice feel it. Gotta go to work. Bye, Kibs and chat. Goodbye. I mean, we have another stream today that I'm gonna force myself to do. Will your story have time skips or shifting points of view? Boog, boog, boog. You ask the right questions sometimes, and sometimes you ask questions that are too good. That is the problem. To be silenced. When you see, the thing is, chat, all you have the power to ask questions that are dangerously powerful. And Boog asked one. Will your story have time skips? See, that's an excellent point. Do you really want to watch the party travel across the North Mariam Ocean? Or is it sea? I think it's Mariam Sea. Or the Sea of Apollonia? Like, you're going to be watching that for fucking ever. Because that's quite the distance to traverse between Avagaria, Halastro, and Astria. I mean, hell, the sea... but, I mean, it's still a fair ways from Halastro to Astria. Or Krynos to Halastro, or something like that. But, like, Avagaria to Astria, or, like, the Sea of Ichio to, like, the Golden Strait, like, that's quite the ways. That's quite a distance to travel. That's a lot of water to go. So I think for honestly, when there's ship travels and stuff, there might have to be some stuff. Thank you for the donation, by the way. Jonathan, and I'll answer the rest of that. Jonathan Macy, though, because he's trying to clarify something. Sorry, Kibs. I hit the enter key. I meant, will you do a story element where a character is trying to do time travel, but because it doesn't exist, it doesn't work, so it was futile? I mean, thing is, you ask an interesting question. Magic in this universe is very much derivative of religion, culture, and the understanding of what it is they're trying to do. So, I use this example all the time because I mostly find it hilarious. If Aya, because she's technically a celestial priestess, because they specialize and focus on healing and aid, if she tried to heal somebody's, like severed artery, and she didn't understand what she was doing to what specifically, she could very well seal the artery shut and just kill him. Whoopsies. And that happens because the understanding of anatomy isn't perfect. I don't understand why you're coughing. I'm just gonna try to heal you. Oh, you died. Well, too bad. Well, magic isn't just a magic thing to wave your hand to fix. That's why this universe very heavily emphasizes magitech. Magic can integrate with technology. I like the idea because it is basically its own science. Yes, in real time, says Disco. Disco, no. I know we added a day and night cycle, but no. At least it'll have cool dynamic shadows, chat. At least we get to put the dynamic lighting system to the test. Let's finish Boog's other question, because he asked a good one. Story have time skips or shifting points of view? Shifting points of view is something I'm heavily considering. Mostly because the story is grandiose, it's an epic, and it takes place over the span of... Okay, who am I kidding? I'm not going to lie to you. I already considered it, and I already decided I'm going to do it. It's too big not to do. Though it's key specific characters. And party. To not do it would be literally cutting out half the story. Oh, maybe not half, but a third. I think I feel more honest with that one. Let me rephrase. Will you use time skips to advance the plot and change character developments, or pull off a stupid twist? That wasn't very well fucking covered there, Boog. I ask because shitty isekais use the mod. Is this an isekai? No, Boog, it's not. I like to think it's also not shitty. I'd very much like to believe that. You know, I was expecting more questions about the warfare mode, but people seemed pretty satisfied with the presentation and ended up asking more lore questions than I was expecting, to be honest. Which thoroughly surprised me, I'm not going to lie. But no, there's no intent to do that. I generally don't want to do time skips unless they're absolutely necessary. Like, for example, a boat journey across the ocean. If there's some specific character developments that take place on that travel, that will be showed. But we're only going to show what we need to show and what should be shown. I'm not going to waste the player's time with fruitless boringness, because the game's already going to be incredibly long as is, and that's what concerns me the most. Because there's actually a threshold in RPG playtime where if it gets too long, it's actually bad. That's the one thing I'm worried about. That's also why I put secondary quests on a back burner and focusing on the primary quests first for each chapter. Because they take preference. Secondary quests can always be added, but I'm more concerned with time than anything. Because if the game's too long, most people will be mad. Most people will be very mad. See you later, Brian. Thanks for popping by. Coughing, removing lungs, stop coughing. Oh no, Disco's getting very murdery. Very peculiar. Glow in the Dark donates $5. Say, are you sure you don't want multiverse time travel thing? Cough marble. Cough. The thing is, multiverse. That's an interesting question. Something that, in order to validate every decision made in the game, I've already preemptively decided that every ending is canon. For the sole purpose of, if I decanonize one ending, then that literally makes the players who got ending B-1 or whatever be like, oh, my decision didn't matter. No. I like the idea that they all matter, and maybe if I live long enough, I can make a game based on every ending. I can... maybe. But I hate the idea of saying one's not canon. Though sadly, if you make a sequel, you're going to have to address that. And so you have to follow one of the endings. And so maybe that would be voted on or something. I'm not sure how to address that. That's the difficult part. But I hate the idea of ever telling somebody that their ending wasn't canon. Every ending is canon. You could say that that's almost a multiverse of itself. But no time travel. No cross-multiverse bullshit either. They're separate. They don't touch each other. Gross. It's like mixing the peas with the soup. I don't actually mind that, personally, because peas and soup, not a bad thing. How will the economy affect warfare mode? Can a player just roll over the entire thing if they have enough in-game currency? How will you avoid turning it into a chore? Oh boy, you're asking stuff about the Astrian Imperial Treasury. Boog, stop it. Stop. So I've already got ideas on how to address the whole warfare system and how that army funding works. The party's private monies is technically separate, though I can't talk about that because that'd be spoilers. What can I talk about? So imagine, fuck. This is a difficult one. I want to answer it because mechanically speaking, there's an answer behind how this works. It actually explains probably what you want to know. But the problem is it's tethered into a specific story thing, which makes it a particularly sensitive topic. Yes. Money does matter. Money does. The funding of the Empire's treasury does matter. Now, it's not going to be like a grand strategy game, but I don't want it, and I don't want it to be like as fucking hollow as Fable 3 was. But it will matter in terms of like upgrades and stuff like that, like and stuff you can do. And if you do not have access to the Astrian Imperial Treasury, you can have a lot more monies, like a lot, and then the game's economy sort of changes focus at that point. Sorta, maybe. You don't know what I'm saying. Maybe. Clever little chat. There's a lot of questions. If I miss any, by the way, don't be afraid to join the Discord server and type those questions that got missed in the Legends of Terrestria thing. Then at me. I will get back to them. Because I have a feeling I'm going to miss some people's stuff. So if I do, when this ends and you didn't get your question answered, I'll answer them there as well. And you can also ask them in the comments, because I know some people hate Discord, and I understand. So if you don't want to do it in the Discord, you can do it in the comments section. Might take me some time to get to. I'll donate £5 to say, will there be Navy warfare? God damn it, you're asking good questions today, guys. Stop it. In the game, with ships and monsters, or only with ships boarding, or you see, I did an entire system before I did the warfare mode, like a year ago, for the ships, the naval combat that was supposed to go alongside the warfare mode, but I put a pin in it, and I haven't touched it since. And I don't know if it's even like a thing that's going to be in the game, because I do like the idea of like naval actions taking place while like ground actions are taking place, because I like the idea of combined arms, and I like the idea of just being like everything. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know what I mean. You know exactly what I mean. But it's one of those things that's got a pin in it right now. Mostly because budget, and I'm spending every penny I have on other things at the moment. Like the Celeste song with her art, and then the Sunken King of Luminar lore video. It's not a lore video, it's actually a music video. It sounds stupid to say music video, it sounds cringe. But actually like a song and stuff. Just like the Celeste video. Celeste video will just be a single frame with Celeste and her theme. The Sunken King of Luminar will be like a song based on the tale of the Luminarians. And that is all going to be tests to feel out for Kanar, which I'm going to recruit the help of Blondie to help with that. Kanar series is going to have some custom music too, but it's not a major focus because there are tales and songs sung of Kanar and stuff, but maybe there'll be like a tavern thing. We've talked about tavern songs about different things in the past, because there's so many major events like the War of the Five Emperors, or the invasion of the Olney, and the his fucking thing with his wife and whatnot, or the rise of the Onagdor, stuff like that. There's so many things and so many little like major epic tales that build up, because I did the entire timeline up into 1022 AE, like the Astro Crimson Wars, which are fucking amazing. I feel like if I make videos on them, though, it'll make people confused and be like, what? This sounds like awesome. It's like fucking they're basically like, imagine the Punic Wars, but on steroids. I got a little bit of inspiration from just studying history. I'll say that much. Like, I think the third one spans 1, 2, 3, 4 continents, if I remember right. Or no, was it the second one? I don't remember. They're big. I love the crazy empress, though. She's pretty kawaii. She's like, I'm gonna do stuff. She doesn't like her husband dying. There's a reason why the Dominion's called the Astrian Conclave now. It's a bit sad. Genocide is a good thing, chat. You didn't answer my question, Kibs, about futility of time travel in this setting. Oh, yeah. I did mention, I segued into, like, healing stuff. So, in theory, people would try. In theory. They'll try a lot of things, because they don't know. Only we know the answers. But the people in the universe will be like, I'm going to try to become God. And then they succeed somehow. No, I'm kidding. Or they don't, or whatever. They'll learn. Or not. Maybe they'll live their entire lives trying and never knowing. That's the entire fun part. The treasure pile in Fable 3, though. Stop it. Beat the boog. I agree, something wrong. So colored ending a la Mass Effect 3? Ugh. Why would you say that? Why are we talking about endings? Why are we talking about Warfare mode? Look, squares. Maybe I did too good of a job explaining how it worked. And didn't leave enough to the imagination. I should have been vaguer. I should have been extremely vague. I should have been like, so there's tiles and they do stuff. And you'd be like, what? And the units, they like represent things. See, that would have been pretty vague. You would have been pretty confused. Main problem with naval combat is no game ever did it good. By no game, I mean no Total War game. That's funny, Martin. Okay, you kind of have to admit that Shogun 2 Fall of the Samurai wasn't particularly good, but it was silly. Because of the whole ironclad ships. Like, it's amusing. It's amusing. Naval warfare wouldn't be too hard in this system because it's turn-based and it would take place on squares. I'm sorry, that's just funny to me. Oh, because of how the system would be interpreted. Because generally we want to reuse the same system that the game's operating on. Except the thing is, warfare combat will not use microsquares. Microsquares are for special movements and stuff like that. Go and direct donates $5. Say, Kibs, I want it all. I want it all. So we get to customize clothes and weaponry as well as it represented in models. You mean sprites? Little monkey, you don't have models. No, sadly. If I had the funding, though, I would. But that would require ridiculous amounts. Like that, no amount of successful streams will make that much, sadly. And my artist actually persuaded me against the idea because they're actually really, they're actually pretty smart. Okay, like they're really smart. There's actually a good reason why not to do that, and that has to do with design philosophy and how the character's design. Rhea, in spite of her self, looks really good. Like, she's got a really good silhouette and design to her, which is why when we do, if we do make other, make other variants of her or other characters as they experience character growth, which will be super expensive. But if we do that, we can make it look really good and really like fashionable. I'm telling you, there's a reason why people like a lot of sci-fi and stuff like that. In alt history universes, you use the German uniform because if you just make it look good, like that's all that really matters. How will ranged attacks worse melee work and the resolution work? Generally, the resolution, like combat rolls, work the same. It's just how it works on the tactical map would technically be different. Because calculation-wise, I don't want to do that. Calculation-wise, it's more or less the same. Because, I mean, there's only so many ways you can calculate this. But generally speaking, like, the cannons can see over there and they have range there. They can see them on the hill and they can shoot at those guys, right? Whereas the melee unit can't go that far. It can only attack, whatever in that little box. You know what? I'll change colors so it's actually easier to read. So, like, Rhea's unit can attack everything in there. Cannon's got, like, a radius like this, for example. I'm just doing this as an example. Not representative of the actual game. But something like that, And when you click on these units, it'll actually show you their actual combat ranges. So units that are actually targetable will highlight in a certain color, and there'll be different visual cues and indicators to help distinguish that to the player. Just like if you were to select the character here, like in the thumbnail, you'll notice that Sala drew that. Now it's super miniaturized because I miniaturized it for the thumbnail, We can see that it's got a highlight around it, a little arrow denoting that it's been selected, and then other characters would highlight based on where it can go, and the squares would highlight where it could based on move, and whether it used a certain amount of AP would be denoted by the type of highlight around the squares. So there's, like, for example, in the base combat system, there's, like, currently every character is set to use 2 AP. Why? Because we're not fucking with the AP right now, because it gets really messy when you start doing that. That can be changed, and we can add characters with more AP, and that's going to be based on what kind of armor and equipment they're carrying and stuff like that to help determine and denote what kind of abilities are. So they're faster, they move quicker in the turn order, and, you know, stuff like that. But generally it'd be like, so, like, these squares, like, move one, and then the other one would be colored, like, differently. So it's like, this uses that much AP, and that... So if she moves anywhere into the white squares, right, she could still attack. And then the green ones, she'd use both her APs. So she'd be out of action points. And, like, let's say certain abilities cost more action points. Action points represent time. That's all it really does. Like, how much action can this character take in an X amount of time frame, be it 6 seconds or 3 seconds or whatever. That's the idea behind AP in our game. It's basically just time. How long does it take a character to perform an action? Talking myself to death. I'll donate £5 to say, will there be unique mercenary units you can hire to the army that have time to them? If you don't hire them, the other factions will hire them. Potentially, based on narrative things. But remember, it's not like a Total War map. Oh, man, I wish the other pieces were put together. Then I could show you that. Then it would make a little bit more sense in that regard. Dark Knights, $5 say, will being on a hill give bonuses or the sun in your eyes reduce accuracy? See, I wanted to add the sun as a mechanic because we have a dynamic lighting system. But a part of me goes like, maybe that's a bad idea. For the sole fact of, like, the sun is one of those things that, like, the player can't really control. Some games actually had that. Kingdom Under Fire actually had that. It was kind of a cool idea, but it ends up being one of those things where, like, it's kind of just annoying. And so I guess it's one of those things we'll investigate. It's not off the table, but generally we've got to be cautious in how many mechanics we introduced. I want it to be very complicated. It's easily going to be more complicated than your fucking modern Total War, but that's not saying much. Cringe. But, yeah, that isn't saying much at all, is it? That really isn't. That's almost an insult to even compare this to that. To us, even. But yes. In regards to recruiting special units from special factions and stuff, there's a whole idea behind that, and forming alliances based on quests that take place in the adventure sort of mode, or adventure combat. I'm calling it that to differentiate it from warfare mode. That's when the combat takes place in the traditional, like, little micro squares and stuff. Oh, cute, I love this idea. And then the other characters move like that. Also, micro squares opened up a new avenue of movement, and that was diagonal movement, which was originally closed off, and then we reopened that because it's like, well, technically speaking. Micro squares changed a lot, actually, in how movement is actually portrayed in the game. And actually has to be updated into the modern build, but to-do list. Any plans on quasi-immortal character can't die to age in the game? And the consequences of, or the consequence, I'm going to change that word to consequences because I think it makes what you want more sense. On such a person eventually forgetting all they love and not caring about current events. Funny you ask that. It's funny. I hate that you asked that, though. Not your fault. It's just very coincidental. That's all. That's all. Oh. He's sad. There so happens to be a thing we're working on that is coming out. Not super soon, but soon-ish. It's basically like the Celeste song. Celeste song will come first. You'll see. Just keep an eye out for the Sunken King's Lore video. Music thing. I think that is fairly close to a similar situation. I'll say that much. I was referring to visual combat resolution. Apologies if I was not clear. Oh crap, I wish I knew what you were talking about now, because how will range combat versus melee... Oh, visual combat resolution. You mean here? Yeah. So that's going to be difficult, no matter how you slice it. Because, like, let's say this cannon unit's firing at that guy over there, right? Well, technically, the way these things are set up is that it takes place on the square that's being attacked, or, you know, whatever, to determine what the background is. Technically speaking, the cannon isn't even on the same square, or neither is most range units, generally speaking. They're pretty far away. Unless it's, like, for example, right next to them, like in the case of this scene right here that I constructed, where the giants are right next to the cannoneers, and I just put some riflemen there, so some background characters, just to give it a nice little feel and composition. Yeah, that's the idea, right? So it's difficult. It's been a thought on my mind, but I have a few ideas, and I know Cashew had some ideas as well because we had talked about it before. One idea was just to be like, okay, like we could just do it like this, for instance, like let's just focus on this section here, like the cannons fire, and then like the camera, like there's some clouds and like zooms over, and then it shows like, you know, these dudes here, and it's like it's zoomed in, and then it shows like the booms and explosions that the cannons blowing up and stuff like that. That's one idea. Another idea is like to like slash the screen so the cannons go boom, 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 boom. And this is kind of reminiscent of a game called Advanced Wars, and then like the explosions take place over there, and they go boom, boom. You know, that's another solution. I mean, there's actually quite a few ways we can come up with it. It's just what looks the best, and that's gonna require some experimentation. That's like those. If you remember back when we did the regular combat animations and how the presentation for that works. It basically is just a series of trying and trying and trying to figure out what works best. Because the difficult part we had was like, okay, what shows us where the characters are, you know? And so we can actually know where they... Okay, you know what? I'm opening that up because that's funny. Hold on, I'm going to pull up the animations again. So I think they're under animations whip. That's a peepee. We can't show that. Micro squares. Okay, no, I think it's in contextual. Oh my god. We work too much, I guess. It feels like it happened yesterday, but like it's buried. It's absolutely buried. That's... See if I can find an older Verizon version to give you an example of what of what we were trying and how we tried multiple things, and it just sort of figured out one that worked. It probably... God, it's been... Yeah, there we go. Fuck, that took forever. It feels like, again, that wasn't... Because I reposted that not that long ago, but, like, it's actually been a long time. Because, like, we work on this actually quite frequently. So it gets remarkably difficult to see where things are. So, here's an example of us testing stuff. This is... Oh, that's the wrong one. This is the... Fuck, it's super zoomed in now. What the hell? There we go. So here you can see this is sort of what we ended up settling with as an example so that the animation plays out. Because the reason for doing this is budget reasons, actually. And it's a multifaceted approach, right? Number one, if we worry about animations from a character attacking up, down, left, and right, that's going to be a lot more expensive. Number two, that's also not going to look as good if we do it like horizontal or vertically. If a character is attacking a character from a tile directly above or directly below, it looks stupid. We tested some stuff about that. It looked dumb. Like it actually looked bad. Because like you can't see the character that well. That's why the entire idea was like, okay, let's have the combat animation play from left to right, and so we can hyper fixate on the fact that it make it look good. This whole camera perspective took months to develop, actually, because we kept playing with the camera angle. And the idea eventually boiled down to, like, look at that. That was good. Like, the camera angle for the way the sprites are done was specifically done so that way it looked good. Like, you could see the characters and you could see their shapes and their forms very well, and that they were very high quality. So we hyper-fixated on quality and making sure that the combat looked great. So when combat took place, it looked awesome. Like, nothing can compare. And so that was the idea. Because the thing, you're making a game, you also got to compete with other people. So you gotta like go like with the best. I went for the absolute best. That's why it's so freaking expensive. But it's well worth it. It's well worth it. I don't even regret a fucking cent, honestly. But yeah. And so that's why we focused on that. It was to just try to nail down the perspective and figure out the approach. And we eventually figured out like this more or less. Because this shows more or less what's going on, as well as you get the chance to see, you know, the actual sprites hit each other. And it also, because we didn't do the up, down, left, right thing, and it's only like left to right sort of animations, we could now we could actually reinvestigate unique kill animations. Because kill animations were actually canned because of attacking up, down, left to right, and diagonally. Because if you attack from all those angles, that means that's 8 directions for a kill animation that needs to take place. That's 8 animations per everything. That's ridiculous. And so if combat animations only take place in something similar to this, that means the combat animations can be improved in terms of quality and reopens the avenue for unique deaths and kill animations. Oh, I was kind of happy about that actually, because like, yay, now we can have kill animations because it was something I wanted to do before, but then I did the calculations and like just to do like one, get them all done for like chapter 1 was like $64,000, and I was like, oh, and that was just with like the small character set we had. I was like, no. That's just for a fraction of all the characters. This game is very character heavy. Oh my god. Cody Davis donated $5 to say, wait, no, let's back up. We missed one. Could have 4 time of day period associated with filters, a fully dynamic dawn and light time, just like the old CRPG. We already do. Gosh darn it, chat, you never stay up to date with Kibs' development of the game and everyone else. We have a dynamic lighting system in the game where they actually cast shadows and lights change based on light sources. So at night, torches cast shadows on the buildings. And how that works in a fucking 2D game, I don't know. Cash is the genius who came up with how that works. It looks fucking amazing. Here, I'll pull it up. I've got the older video, and it's not the very good one, sadly. It's on our Reddit. We have a Reddit. Look, I branch out to everywhere possible. Yes, it feels pointless, and I die a little bit inside for doing it, but by God, I'll do everything it takes, you know? Short of, selling out to some crappy corporation. I'm not going to bring this over here, because there's a peepee in here somewhere. Because one of the celestial gods have their Huang sticking out. Here's actually something we could talk about. Seeing how we're covering such a broad topic, I can open these images up to discuss things. And she's cute. Who doesn't love Celeste? Everybody likes her. She's cute. She's small. Looks kind of retarded. She looks kind of... Chat, where the hell is the thing? I pass it? The dynamic animation's here. I know it's here. I put it here. Dynamic shadows, where? Come on. Maybe post too much stuff. Found it. There we go. Yeah. Here we go. All right, chat, take a look at this. Now, it's not pretty good quality, and this is an earlier version of it. But this was a test of the... Yeah, it'd be quality drops, because for whatever reason, it didn't embed very well. Oh, God, that's awful. It's actually awful. Now I'm actually mad now. God damn it. I'll have to ask Cash for the better one. But you can see the shadows casting. Yeah, see the dynamic casting? Oh, so good. And then, like, there'll be other light sources, too, that you're about to see. Most people didn't actually watch the full thing, which kind of annoyed me. They only watched it, like, cycle out, and then they stopped it. Like, there's actually more to it, though. And see, there you can see lights casting at night, which affect the pillars. And then you're also going to see that light sources can move and interact. They're not just static things. So if a character is carrying a torch, it can actually move around. So he just grabbed one of the torches off the pillar. Like, it actually casts lights on other things. How that works in a sprite-based game, I have no idea. But he managed to figure it out. This is a much earlier version of it. But yeah, the dynamic lighting system is actually a thing. And it looks pretty good. And so I definitely wanted to try out some stuff with it, but again, it's very difficult to portray where the sun is coming from on the actual combat map. As well as mechanics bloat is something that you always have to be careful of, because bloating the game causes a lot of serious problems down the line. A lot. Get a real haircut donates a bit to say airship squeak cheer. You think Astrians can fly? Ah ha 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 ha. Ooh. Why would you want them to fly? That's just silly. Airships. That's just a cliche trope of JRPGs. Originally, in the old lore, yes, they actually had trains and stuff. Then we dialed the tech back to basically be like Antiquity Plus. Imagine if Antiquity never died. Also, one super thing important to remember lore-wise. When we talk about technology on Terrestria, remember that it's not actually the same as Earth or anything like that. It's based on Terran technology advancement, but certain technologies were invented, others are better, and some are not. Because the culture's pushed in certain directions that didn't in our world. A lot of people are like, did this get invented in that order? No. I already established which things got invented in the lore Bible, but I'm not going to share that with you. It's part of the surprise. It's a big squeaker chat. But Kibs, squeakers are hard and mean. Glow in the Dark donates $5. Like cannons can shoot and could do a short cutscene of balls flying through the air in background and dust of the clouds as it hits the enemy. That's actually what I was thinking. One of the things. Cody donates $5. Say, just got to my car, leaving for work. I'll catch the VOD. This for sure. It's great to see the progress you guys have been making. Honestly, we make a lot more progress. We just can't share it half the time. And half the time we post it to the YouTube community section, and people only just hit the like button. And we don't really get to talk about it. So we'll talk about a couple things because people seem pretty satisfied with the warfare mode. Cutscenes. How are cutscenes going to be handled? We addressed this actually in this thing a while back. And so it's like, okay, you have Aya waking up from a nightmare, part of a test scene, and then the guards bursting in, going like, "What's going on?" and stuff like that. So we've already got like ideas on how to handle cutscenes, because cutscenes will use the actual big illustration pieces and stuff like that, which are extraordinarily expensive, but it's honestly a must. And then there'll be different cutscenes for different decisions and stuff like that. And so that's the idea behind that. And so they'll get different big illustrations as well as the results in the game and all that. So yeah, that was basically simple scene construction, you know. Like she's laying in bed, she wakes up screaming, and then footsteps because the Palatina guard burst in the door. Like, what is it? And then there's Captain Tiano, which is one of the guards of the or one of the captain of the guard of the Palatina, which are the elite Imperial Guard that protect the royal family. The Valen line. They have been around for fucking ever and are based off of the companions of Kanar. Fun fact of the day. Look, you learned a little bit of something new. Okay. Here's some sprites. While I read super chats. We have a lot more now, but you can see the progression. How detailed they are is magnificent. Let's see. Oh no, I think I got caught up. Nice. All right. With quasi-immortal thing, is there any? I think I read that. Wasn't that a while ago, or did you just repost that, Jonathan? Because I answered that. Well, the Dark donates $5. Say, will there be a cooldown for certain skills on battle map? Will there be certain moves that take more action points? Yes to both. Depending on the power of a spell or something, we'll be balancing that by maybe it requires certain things. Now for the celestial magic, it's a little bit of I can't talk about, but I can talk about other magics. For example, the Navarians exchange things and turn them into ash in order to get power to do casty spells. Or in the case of the Blood Empire, you're not going to be surprised, but they use blood magic. I know, strange, weird, huh? Never would have thought that. But they sacrifice blood and life's essence to gain energy, or sometimes lives. Actually, a lot of times other people's lives. That's what their slaves are for. Sad little slaves. They get executed. But, I mean, it's all for good cause, right? More power. But yeah, and then certain spells require cooldowns. And it depends on the magic type or magic system they use. Because, like, technically, runic magic is very different than celestial magic. Because celestial is mostly incantation based. Versus runic is very much, like, etchings and carvings and stuff like that. Imbued with power and charged actively. And then they hold an active charge, but once they deplete that charge, then they become depleted like little batteries. Now, there was clarification on what exactly asking. See, I can't answer specific character questions. I can say there are characters like that. And by characters, I mean a character. And that it's in the works. But I can't go much further into that, because that would be spoiling. We have a dynamic range of variety of characters. I'm trying to use PR words now. Oh, kill me. Will the game have sound design for attack animations? If the answer is yes, buy them or record them yourself. Oh boy, you had to ask that question that makes my wallet emptier. That is already a problem that we're worrying about addressing. And it's not an easy answer, honestly. The answer is we need more months, and that's a problem we're actually pushing out to later. We do have placeholder sound effects being prepared, and that's being done by the design and writing team. Yeah, I know. Why are they doing it? Why are we technically doing it? Because we don't have anybody on team who specializes in sound engineering. We'll be doing it temporarily till we can either A, find somebody who can do it with the actual skill level, because we do curate the people project. They have to meet a minimum standard. And generally, we only take the best, generally. So, actually, mostly, in fact, all the time. So we're very picky about it. Very picky. In order to get the approval process. We don't just let anybody onto the team. They actually have to be really good at what they do. The second plan B is to get a external studio to do the sound effects and the voice work. I don't even know. I don't even. The voice work's going to be awful. Awful in terms of expenses, and I don't want to think about that right now. So we're going to put a pin in that. Just like sound effects and that stuff are not even be worried about being funded. All funding is going into art. And the programmers are working on their spare dime. So everybody's sacrificing something for the project generally. It's a pretty big project. And there's actually a pretty large indie team, about 14 members. Which is actually sizable. As far as indies go, that's pretty big. Will the game... Yep, I read that. Max and minimum unit size. You mean party size? Like, how many characters you control in the adventure combat or the warfare combat? That is an excellent question to ask. Generally, we have no cap on it right now. We're experimenting. Originally, the cap was set to 6, and then we lifted the cap altogether. Like the last couple builds ago. Because we're going to just play with as many characters as we can and as few as we can. The reason for this is because quests with additional allied NPCs, I and the other designers have come to the conclusion that maybe it's better the player takes control over all allied units, purely for the sake of the fact that, generally speaking, while we're doing our best and our programmers are doing their best to make the AI as smart and as stonk and as big brain as possible, it can only be scripted so many ways. And it can't really account for absolutely everything. And especially if you have to make an AI specifically for allied stuff, like, player does something, AI's like, I'm gonna help, and it's like, I help by being retarded. The player's gonna get mad. So generally it's like, okay, if an allied character joins the quest, like a Baron or somebody comes along, you get control of that character. Like he's a special character for that quest or something. That's the idea. Or like some allied troops show up and you take control of them. The idea behind that is, unless it's like a heavily scripted thing, it's more infuriating to have allied NPCs be stupid than it would be for the player to control them. As somebody who's played a lot of video games, like half the time, like just give me control of them. And so, even if the AI is good and it does just one stupid thing, it can be annoying. It can actually screw over the player, and I do not want that to occur. Because balance. So, yeah. The player will take control of them because the player is, at the end of the day, smarter than the AI. Because an AI is simulated intelligence. The player is actual intelligence. That's fine. I was just wondering what going to flip the trope. I have become all powerful, so I must want to rule the world. Have someone who just wants to live their life. Actually, we don't have a character quite like that. We've got a lot of characters with their own stories. But when it comes to character questions or specific story questions, we don't really answer too much of that because, well, that's generally for you to explore. It's also not particularly helpful to answer those kinds of questions because all it can generally do is lead to a misinterpretation of something. Especially if it's character focused. And the game is character focused. This was recommended to me, says Abdi. Well, good. I'm glad you're here. He's like, I'll donates £2 to ask, how moddable will the game be? In my mind, very. The programmers might want to lynch me, though. Looks at chat nervously. In my mind, I want it to be extremely moddable. In my mind, I want a lot of things, though. But generally, I want it to be moddable. I want it to be something that if you want to change something or you want to tweak something, you should be able to do it. We're not going to actively fight the players on that. In fact, I want to be able to help the players and encourage modding. Generally. Though, that's not our focus right now. Fine. I'd actually talked with the lead programmer about this already. We had... I'm sad. We had talked about this, okay? And he's like, yeah. We basically came to an agreement. Yeah, we should make it moddable. And I do want to do that. And I wanted to go a step further. I wanted to make a tool that will be with the game on release, hopefully, in which you can easily add stuff and tweak things. The inspiration from that came from a little game called, a big game actually, called Warcraft 3. I liked the level editor in that. It inspired me a lot, and I liked the idea that that level editor could be used to build the game. Because it would be helpful to take the workload off the programmers and put it onto the designers and writers like me, Bubbles, and Hans and Fairman. Because I wouldn't mind doing more work, even though we're doing the writing and the designing and a bunch of other things in the directing. I wouldn't mind more, honestly. In fact, I wish I could do more. And so setting up that tool would be nice. And making it accessible as well as an easy input source to input new assets would also be a nice addendum. Because then it would also make it easy to tweak as we go. Alright, I'm getting buried in supers. Thank you for... You guys are super generous today. The artists are going to be very happy. They're going to eat it all. Glow in the Dark donates $2 to say, in Kibs' mind, he is rich. I make a lot of money, actually. I just don't have a lot of money, because I spend it all on game development. So, I do it to myself, but it's honestly, in my mind, it makes me happy. Mad Beast Yeti donates a very generous 50 Canadian bucks to say, hope there are some villain PC. Villain playable characters? What are you, evil? You think that our sweet little Princess Rhea, she would never hurt anybody. She could never be coerced into committing genocide. There's a the thing about morality, every culture in Terrestria has their own morality. The Astrians have a very peculiar morality, specifically the Celestial Order, which Rhea is a part of. The ends generally justify the means. What's a little bit of genocide if it isn't for the betterment of mankind, from their point of view, right? It's all in the eye of the beholder, right? Beauty, evil, right? That doesn't work. Any formations will they affect combat? I did mention before, I think, that they do. For instance, in this picture here, right? This unit has an officer. An officer, if... See, I have an idea. I don't know how I feel about that. It is a bit RNG based on how combat calculations work. So I'm nervous about it. Because RNG always can really make the player mad. I don't want them to be mad. I don't want them to be mad. But an officer technically can be killed in combat. Now, technically he has a greater value of armor than the other soldiers, because that way it helps ensure that he has a higher chance of surviving. But if he dies, I like the idea that the unit loses their cohesion. For example, the unit on the right, the group of Shoyo warriors, just have a bannerman. They have no musician, no officer. So they're very loosely scattered because they aren't able to hold formation properly, versus the elite Astrian infantry on the left have their officer, a musician, a bannerman, and a hero unit embedded into that unit. That's my idea. So I do like the idea of formations taking a play. So sure, the Shoyo unit formation is looser, technically. So if ranged fire did occur on that unit, they would do less damage because the unit's in loose formation. They're a lot harder to hit versus the tight, compact Astrian formation block. But we'll experiment with it. The Shoyo soldiers were inspired by a bit of Maori. I just like the fact that they have those little pick things. They look painful. They are not as heavily armored as the Astrians. In fact, painfully under by comparison. It is not a fair matchup on this screen right here, to say the least. It's a bit brutal. Alright, we got some catching up to do. Kyle donates £5 to say, will there be any multiplayer to the game? Like you and a friend go head to head in the warfare, where the player pick a faction, have points for units. That is something Tyler actually suggested to me. And I said simply in response that we should focus on making the game as great as we can and focus on the single player stuff. Because it is a single player story bit driven campaign with a great epic campaign. So that's the main focus. I'm not opposed to the idea, because like a part of me would like to add that for the sake of maybe modders could do something and push that even further than we can, because we have limited resources. And technically they have this wonderful thing called spare time, which is one of the most powerful things humans have. And I envy that. They could even go beyond us in that regard. And I would be very curious to see what they could do with that. It's something I daydream about. I'll say that much. I daydream about it. I also daydream about making it so that they could eventually mod it to become like a Total War game. I'm not just saying that because I hope they do, but that'd be cool, okay? I'd be cool with that. Be really cool. I do fantasize about that a little bit. Somebody modding Medieval 2 with the Terrestria Total War mod, that'd be so cool. Oh, I'd even help with the fucking stuff with that, if I could, if I knew how. I don't even know how to code. The Salty Pretzel donates a generous $5. Say, this question might have already been asked, but will terrain have an effect on units? Like line of sight, other miscellaneous effects? You're right, it will. And then it is a question that's been asked, but that doesn't matter. It's okay. Like if you're just new here and you missed it, I mean, that's the purpose why I wanted to stream this. People could ask questions and we could get to have a little bit of a dialogue and a conversation about it. And then maybe, if we're lucky, you'll see something that I totally missed. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't think about that. And maybe I should go fix that. So far that hasn't happened yet. But it is still time. It only takes one lucky torpedo strike. But yeah, so the road tiles, the characters move faster on. Tree tiles, they move slower, but their line of sight is reduced. As well as they do give the benefit of like cover from certain range fire. Then again, I wanted to have different terrain tiles be affected by wetness. Now, you're asking why, I know, but I like the idea of fire mechanic being a thing. But I feel like maybe some form of like, if it's raining, there shouldn't be fire spread as easy. You know, basic things like that. So it's like, okay, if it's a dry biome or dry section of land, maybe it should be easier to start fire. And fire played a big role in warfare back then because it scared people, it made it very hard to breathe, and in forests it actually got very lethal because falling debris. The biggest thing with the forest is, burning trees falling on people, crushing them and trapping them. People suffocating because smoke's everywhere and the canopies kind of hold it up. Let's see. Glow in the Dark donates $5 to say, will there be diversity because I get tired of killing only white people? Lol. Technically speaking, Terrestria is a massive ass fucking planet. There are different cultures and things that you'll get to see in Genocide. So yeah, there'll be tons of stuff to do. There's a war. Nobody said the Astrians were the good guys. No kidding. Of course they're good. They're spreading enlightenment. Whether you want it or not. But yeah, no, there will be other cultures. It's not just going to be like the Greco-Romanistic Astrians. You'll see a lot more. Right now, we're hyper-fixated on the Astrian Empire because we have to focus on one of them at a time. In fact, if you actually paid attention to some of the art we've shown in previous streams and stuff, like the Astrian Empire is actually made up of different subcultures. There is the Southern Astrians, the Northern Astrians, the Lanians, which are another subset culture group slightly to the north of the Taurians, and then there is the Seaborn of Concordia. Then there's the Tilians, or the Tilian, I can't remember. Tiliasians, the Tilius people. And Nataclesius and Helvist are mostly colonies, so they're mostly made up of Southern Astrian ethnic group. But yeah, there are different culture groups and stuff like that. Like the Cardovians are like, what are they? They're like 6 feet tall. They're pretty tall. Like Rhea looks up and goes like, "Oh my gosh, a tall person," because Rhea's like 5 feet, and Astrians are like around 5 feet around that ballpark. They're actually kind of short, and that's actually represented in game. So different cultures, different heights. The Stosi are like 8 feet and stuff like that. Other races have different visual appearances, different clothing, different cultures, styles, architectures, or architectural style, different art styles too, by the way. So if there's paintings or stuff like that, like we were designing and talking about designing the Astrian food courts and stuff, and the city of Pyria, like how do the merchants decorate the food stalls? And so some of the buildings have like painted pork and stuff on it, the side using mosaics and stuff like that. Versus if it was in some other place, it might be like some sort of like painting, some sort of paint on the wall, or maybe it's like etchings and stuff like that, or statues. But the Astrians love the use of the mosaics with colored rocks and stuff because they think they're pretty people. And so that's going to be like that. Okay, we gotta make sure I catch up all the super chats. God damn it. Oh, in the Dark donates $2. Say, any unique units like Dragon Calv? I can't answer, like, specifically what that would be. But, see, we don't really have dragons, orcs, or elves. I banned that. None. No orcs, no dwarves, no elves, no Tolkien stuff. That's Tolkien stuff. I don't need to plagiarize his work. We'll come up with our own stuff. And our own mythos stuff, and it'll be based on Astrian lore and stuff, like the celestial fucking. It's not a dragon, but it's a feathery thing. Guardian. It's one of the celestial beings that, like the goddess Syra uses, and she used hers to basically imprison her father. I can't remember his name. The old celestial god of justice who killed all the other gods. Imprisoned him at the heart of Terrestria. What the hell is that thing called? It's actually one of the symbols of the Empire. Symbol of guardianship and protection. I can't remember. It's covered in feathers. It's got little hands. That's all I remember. Kind of looks like a little sneak. But with feathers. Kind of adorable. But yes, they do have their own unique celestial entities. Those are ethereal, corporeal. Those aren't really mortal things. But yeah, there are unique stuff and unique units and whatnot. There's more than just humans, but generally Terrestria follows the general idea of the alpha species. So by this point, because generally around the caveman days, like any other species would be eliminated. Generally. Because alpha species are pretty territorial and they spread like wildfire. They wipe out every possible threat in most cases. Save for like certain parts of Africa for some reason that just didn't for a very long time. Like there were lots of problems with lions and tigers eating people. Like a lot of people too. Like it's actually kind of scary. You can actually look it up. When the British Empire went down there to help build railways and stuff, they had to send hunters down to hunt the tigers because they'd eat the workers. They were extremely aggressive and they weren't afraid of men. That was the problem. Heil donates £5 to say, will your game have unique siege equipment based on the lore of the world and its magic when it comes to fighting forts and castles? Remember, I specifically went out of my way to make magic rare. So mages are rare as sin. Why? Because too many mages would affect the technological progression of the world, and I hated that. I didn't want the world to be like, they don't farm anymore because they just have mages do it. It's like, that's dumb. That's dumb. They need to suffer and work and sweat and, get arthritis and be miserable, okay? That's also the reason why not very many cultures are ruled by mages, because I kind of hate them. And that's why the Astrian Empire has one of the longest ruling families is a mage family. And that's not surprising. There's a reason why other cultures look down upon mages for certain reasons. The Astrian Empire is kind of proof of that. They're like, once they get power, they don't really let go. We's in charge. Please put a bottle of ketchup in the game, says Luke Goblins. I can't promise or deny anything in regards to Easter eggs. Easter eggs have to be secrets. But I do intend to use Easter eggs. Very much so. But I'm not going to say what, because that's the whole point. It's supposed to be a surprise. You got to be on the lookout for it. The fun part is finding it. Multiplayer, read that. This question might already be answered. Read that. And Kibs, Rich. Yep. Good, we're up to date. Did it, chat. We're heroes. Are there any original wildlife like squirrels, bunnies, or deer or horses? So that is a good question. I do like you guys. You guys ask some really good questions today, actually. Yeah, there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But there are horses. And there are things like regular deer and stuff. The reason for this is simple. I wanted to keep it kind of touch base. So for instance, in like Astria, okay, this might be easier to explain it this way. I made this big ass map. It's like 15 gigabytes big and it has like 400 or 1,000 layers or something like that. I don't remember. It's a lot. And the layers determine different things. One of the layers determines the type of tameness of the land, how well tamed it is, based on the civilization level of the culture that inhabits it. In Astria, the civilization is pretty predominant and powerful and advanced. They've managed to tame the lands very well, meaning man-eater things and very scary monsters have mostly been killed and dealt with by now. But in places like Avagaria, or places like Vadsti, which is very much untamed. Vadsti is one of the continents that is one of the most deadliest continents in the universe, or in the world of Terrestria. Now, I don't know. There's other planets out there. There could be something worse. But Vadsti is one of the worst continents. Like, that's no secret. Like, empires have tried to colonize it and have utterly failed. And the only thing that's successful is the river empires. And that's because they live on the rivers. Dare they settle in those giant fucking canopy trees. Oh, the things that lurk in there. Humans are definitely on the bottom of the food chain. There are lots of nasty things in Vadsti. Horrible diseases and all sorts of other nasty things. The rivers are the safest thing, and that's not saying much. That's why there's giant entire floating cities floating around. But yes, that's where the Mazda Moon, or what do they call them? Mazatec. They got the retcon, because the name sounded too much like Mazda Mundi. And Bubbles, see, the thing is, I make names, and then Bubbles will be like, that sounds like this thing. I'm like, Bubbles, now that you told me that, like, I made a rule that I'd never change something based on what it sounded like. But whenever he tells me that, I'm like, now I have to change it. He's like, like, I don't like the fact that it sounds like that. And then I find out that other things I've made up fucking sound like something else, and I'm like, God damn it. And I've just learned now to just accept it. No matter what I say, no matter how many syllables or weird things I use, it's probably a word in some other language. It just so happens to be the case all the time. You plan to have any nods, Easter eggs to real life event cultures referencing a real song or your friends? Maybe the Bickering Bunch channel, if anything, but no, generally not. And if there were any references or Easter eggs I'd put in there, it would be specifically to the inner circle of people that, like YouTubers that I'm friends with, and it would be so small you would never fucking notice it. If you did, you really went out of your way to find it. Because I generally want to tuck it away and hide it, hide it, hide it. Make it very difficult to find, and when you find it, it's like, haha, there it is, and then it's gone. But no, generally, no real life events. Terrestria is not based on contemporary politics and has nothing to do with our world whatsoever. In fact, the entire universe has nothing to do with our world. No real life politics, period. That is actually in the lower Bible. That's actually like an actual rule. No contemporary politics. No, like, this is bad, that's bad. Just like in the lower Bible, it's like, technically speaking, anything the player chooses is not bad. There's no such thing as bad or good choice. There's no such thing as good and evil in Terrestria or the universe. There's only perspectives. And so if the Astrian culture has different vices and virtues, then what they think is good, they believe is good. Just like the Galileans have their own vices and virtues. That's how morality is decided. It's decided on an individual culture basis. So different cultures and individuals have their own feelings on stuff. And there's no such thing as right or wrong. Slavery, no such thing as right or wrong. The certain cultures use it and think it's okay. Other cultures look at it and go like, that's horrible. You should stop that. But the game's not going to tell you, we're not going to preach at you and be like, that's bad. That's not our place to preach at the player. The players can decide for themselves what they think is right and wrong. To preach at them is to be a fucking monkey and waste dialogue lines on fucking useless drivel. Can I sacrifice my firstborn? It's not a sandbox RPG. God damn it. No, Legends of Terrestria is not a sandbox RPG. It's not like Mountain Blade where you can just do whatever you want. No. It's very much a story, but a story in which you influence. It's a kind of a, it's not, this isn't an accurate description at all, but I'm going to use it anyways because I think it'll help give you an idea. Imagine a JRPG, right? No story decisions whatsoever. It's a straight line. A, B to C to D. The end. Now imagine CRPG, where there's a lot more freedom. But the only thing that's different is I want a specific set of characters for the story, because I can better construct the narrative and the story and the events, and I can give meaning to your decisions, because you'd be like, you did that thing and I thought that was bad, and you could be like, shut up. I like the idea of that. I'll donate £2 to say, will that Fraction River have unique war beast? What? Will that faction River faction? The Blood Empire. I think there's multiple different nations over there. The Blood Empire is one of the bigger ones, but there's various smaller tribes that don't even have names on the map. They are on the migratory map, which is autistic, because the migratory map represents different zones of food and resources that are large enough to sustain a different tribe. The migratory map hurts my soul to look at sometimes. But the more settled ones, like Nilatek and Nicoya and Mazatec, they have their own stuff. Those are the three major ones, northern region, because that's actually more safe. The further south you go into Vatsy, into the core of the continent, the worse it gets generally. And Glow and Dark donates $5 say the only thing that matters is survival or the sharpest fangs win killing bites. Yeah, I'm not Arch, I don't mind. It's kind of cringe, but it's whatever. Arch, on the other hand, is someone going clutching his chest, having a heart attack because he heard it too many times. Like formations. Pike? You want pike and shot? Get out. No, I'm kidding. But I wasn't meaning politics. I was more means like real life books or music or games being references to an in universe saying song. Generally, no. And don't be sorry. You're asking questions. There's nothing wrong, and there's no harm in asking a question. Unless you ask the wrong one. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, I had to do that. It was too easy. There's no harm in asking. But no. No references to songs or pop culture or much of anything else. Not if I can help it, unless Bubbles sneaks one past me. Generally, I want to keep our world stuff away. I just don't really want that kind of stuff personally. I don't mind little Easter eggs here and there, but generally, if there are Easter eggs, there's going to be few of them, and they're going to be hard to find. You're going to have to work to find them. And that's going to be the fun of it, like a hunt. Want to be clever with it. Want it to be a fun little puzzle or something. Something interesting to explore. And maybe that'll help encourage a little bit of exploration. That's good, Bastard Beast. Oh, never stop world building. I'm at the point now where I've constructed out the bullet points well enough, and now it's all about the execution. Because generally speaking, developing Terrestria is a mixture of discovery writing and pre-planning. And the reason for this is because I can't pre-plan for everything because that will railroad me. I need to be ready to adapt. So a mixture of discovery writing and pre-planning. That's why chunking has been such a good idea. Chunking worked very well for the development of this. It's also better for team-based writing. That is the idea. Kibs, will there be any real-life ideology in any culture of the culture? Any of the cultures. I'm adding an S there. Like communism, fascism, democracy, or monarchism. I mean, there are their own ideologies. Whether they fall under different categories of real-life ones is inconsequential. Fascism and communism. That's fairly advanced ideologies for an underdeveloped world. Probably not. But the Shroud doings $5 say mage smiths. I don't know what that means though. That was pretty vague. Mage smiths as in what though? What does that mean? Mages that so happen to be smiths, or smiths that so happen to be mages? And what does that mean in terms of smithing? And what? I mean, I guess they can smith faster. They might be able to do some special thing. But remember, magic is energy based. If it doesn't stay actively charged and runs out of battery juice, it just doesn't work no more. You can't find a sword and be like, aha, it's enchanted. Like, its battery ran out long ago. Oh no. Generally, magic is very much requires some sort of energy or power source. If it can't maintain its power, it turns off. Magic can do other things like break the laws of physics, technically. That's how it works. But it also is one of those things that is kind of fucked up. Really go in depth with a culture's food. I want to. I've been experimenting with recipes to try to start expanding the Astrian amounts of foods you can buy at the food places. I do want you to be able to buy foods and stuff, but I want it to be fairly accurate. So I was looking up and doing studies on different types of quote-unquote early, quote-unquote, like food places where they would have like food and stuff, and fried snails was one of the things that was apparently considered a snack. Think. I want to emphasize think there. It's based on fossils and discoveries in like old Latin like dining places. I mean, you can send me cultured food, but generally I'm going to research culture based on the region and what access to what types of food they have. And then from there I'm going to determine what type of food they'll eat. Like at the dining scene. Like if you look on the dining scene, it'll be like we were doing research, like, okay, the capital city was relocated from Helios to Pieria because Helios is in a valley, and the Nephiric Horde are at the river of Osos, and if the Nephiric Horde were to break through, they could just completely move past and cut off connection to Helios. So that's why the capital was relocated to Pyria, a port city that's also in a very fortified position. It's not easy to get around, it's not easy to get into. It's kind of a bitch and a half to attack, even from sea, and it's just a really defensible city. Not the biggest city, but it is a very defensible position, which is why the capital was relocated there. It's also pretty difficult to attack. Versus Helios was never particularly difficult to attack. It was always a big city and one of the religious centers of the empire, specifically for the Celestial Order. Technically, there are other religions that make up the empire, but the Celestial Order is the predominant one. Specifically the Starborn Pantheon. Though I don't think I need to fucking clarify that. Because the old Celestial Order is considered forgotten, because they literally fucking converted or killed any non-believers when they went through the religious reformation. Thank you, Kanar. You're such a kind of guy. Let's see. Pyle donates £5 to say, how dark will the game be? Like, will the soldier try to rape town village or village after battle and have slaver with slave units and their army and cannibals? I mean, the universe will be as dark and as bright as it needs to be. Terrestria is very much a world, much like ours. There are happy things, good things, and there are bad things. Really bad things, like awful things, like war crimes. And these happen quite frequently. Just like in our world, they also happen quite frequently as well. Especially back then, because ethical code and quote-unquote Geneva war or conventions of war weren't super thing. Though there are certain things cultures frown upon. Like executing prisoners might be frowned upon by one culture. Another culture might be like, slaves. Depends. In the Astrian Empire, they don't technically have slaves. But you could quasi-become one. They have a strange thing with prisoners, I'll say that much. Does magic work around electricity? No. If it has been discovered. Not quite. And no, it doesn't work around electricity. It's not even electrical. Because if it doesn't, how do people live as we do, have an electrical current in our bodies? Well, it's not magic, or it's not electrical. It has nothing to do with electricity. So, it depends on the magic system, because each system has a different energy type. Like the great spirits of the Nephir Chord, because they have the Great Mother and Great Father, tamed the elements, wind, fire, and water, and earth, and all that. And that was humanity conquering, and so that's their vision of how humanity came to dominate everything else. Sorry, got a text message. Was making sure it was non-work related. Can players be able to design and upgrade city defenses? No. Nope. That takes focus away from the game too much onto weird things that have nothing to do with the game. If it was a grand strategy game or a strategy game, yes. But this isn't a strategy game. This is a role-playing game. Now, there might be narrative decisions that help you impact like a city's defenses or things like that, though. Just like in the warfare mode is affected by narrative decisions. The narrative affects the actual mode itself. Because it's a role-playing game. To take it away and put it on something else would be really bad. Really bad. Gotta stay in character. It's actually super important that they stay in character. Blade donates $1. Any special events in game like comet passes by, asteroid hit Earth, volcano explodes, monster migration, will it affect cultures? That's borderline spoilery, but you manage to weasel out because you're just like, we'll do stuff. If stuff happens, stuff will happen. That's kind of like, I hate that explanation, but that's kind of the explanation like you're asking for. Like if a volcano erupts at Helios, even though it's not a dormant volcano, but let's say it was, the city would probably be destroyed. And the characters that were there would have either A, fled, or B, died. Like if a big event happens, it'll happen. And then the stuff around that event will happen. Like, does that make sense? Like, I don't know. It just seems kind of weird to me. Like if a city experiences a flood, the city will be flooded. If that happens, though doubtful that that's going to happen, because like the game's like takes place over what this. It starts in 1022 AE, right? And it takes place over the course of what, maybe several years or so, maybe that many. Like I don't know. Like the time, the real kicker is like, okay, how long does it all actually happen? But it's not like the span of like decades or generations. It actually takes place during the crisis of the or the continued basic crisis of the Five Emperors, because the War of the Five Emperors caused a crisis which allowed for the first barbaric invasions from the Ogorial Plains, which just continued to happen, and basically never was able to fully stabilize. It was only until the Battle of Broken Storms, the halting of the River of Osos, when Pulioso and his father basically confronted the Horde and managed to put a stop to them because they couldn't outmaneuver them for once, uh, that they were actually able to stop the Horde. But granted, Pulioso's father died, which drove him mad, and then killed his wife, and then his son Crondrius and Nidus were not so pleased, and then there was the War of the Father, and then he was cast from the tower, and he plummeted to his death. But, details. Either way. And that's where we are now. Like, it's basically after the miniature civil war they experienced, little bitty, itty bitty crisis. I mean, it's kind of hard to have a lot of supporters when you're kind of batshit crazy. People kind of just turn tail and go like, maybe you're not a good emperor anymore. Love Barch playing Lego Star Wars. It would be funny to get him to play Lego Star Wars. I will say that much. Can you say how the leveling up will work? As in a character locked into a set progression path? Or can you customize their skill set? You can customize their skill set. That's the plan. Generally, I want characters to be able to go into certain archetypes. Like, Rhea, the idea behind her character that we have so far is she's a frontline support mage. Her sister, Aya, is a typical, like, sort of healer mage, but can be able to spec out into other things and make different variants on that. They technically follow under different class archetypes, actually. Rhea, much like her father and any heiress to or heir to inherit the throne, is generally taught the what do you call it? They're generally taught in the ways of the Celestial Templar, which are their military arm. Nobody's taught how to be oracles anymore because that was considered a very awful practice. It was very deadly. So they don't have oracles anymore because they've been outlawed since Kanar came to power in like 0 AE. But yeah, so there's no oracles anymore. Celestial Templars and the Celestial Priests still. They are more dedicated to just like support stuff like that. Nezra isn't even really taught in the celestial ways. She's actually taught in the ways of the Cardovian runics, and that's because she was betrothed a Cardovian prince, so that the little Cardovian shit stains will stop raiding their ghost. They're kind of cheeky little gits. Like, they just kind of nipping away at the little tiny islands. Like, they have a bunch of little islands that they nipped away from Astria. And she's like, stop. You're taking my islands. Here, have my daughter instead. Oh, that'll get him to stop. Granted, that's only one royal marriage to one of the four Cornigers of the United Kingdoms. So technically, only one of them will stop. But hey, it's better than all four. And who knows, maybe that one can bully the others into behaving. But yeah, so she's learning runic, which is a very different magic type. But it's a different religion, technically. Is the setting more light versus dark or shades of gray when it comes to morality, good versus evil? I mean, everybody in Terrestria thinks they're a good guy. Even beyond. They're like, he's good. He's just trying to live and survive. I mean, there are bad people, but comic book class evil villains, like, they're generally considered insane. It's more of a world of reality, I guess, in of its own sense. Generally, like for example, Varus. Varus doesn't necessarily want to wipe out. Okay, well that's a difficult one. Varus likes revenge because Varus mad about Astrians genociding the Navarians like or was it 600, 700 years ago during the last Astral Crimson War, and shattering their little dominion into a little tiny shit stain of a country. They're a little bit pissed. So they have a very bad history. Versus the king of Novaria doesn't, like, has kind of just like, like that happened hundreds of years ago. Like, whatever. Like, Varus is, different character motives and ambitions versus the king, etc., etc. Like, they all have their own different motives and ambitions. Some want revenge, some seek glory, some seek this and that. Is there more question? Are you doing the J.K. Rowling approach to electricity, where she says it doesn't work well, not understanding what that means? Magic is now lethal. Magic isn't electricity. Not even lethal to humans. But it's also lethal to humans at the same time. That's complicated, and I'd have to get into the detailed mechanics of things you can't be allowed to understand. We already know how it works. You're not allowed to, chat. Sorry. You're not allowed to yet. But no. Magic is not electricity. It never was. I mean, there's spells that could be, but like, it would be an individual spell. But no. And I'd have no idea what J.K. Rowling is about. Other than the fact that I remember seeing like the first Harry Potter movie was chess pieces, which kind of inspired this, to be honest. I was like, remember the chess pieces and how they crumbled a little bit? Like, let's make them crumbly. And so they got crumbly. So that one's crumbling because it's damaged. That one's crumbling because it's damaged. Here's the actual full sizes, by the way. You can see them. They're actually very detailed. I will be releasing this for public use. So you guys can play with the map, and you can actually submit stuff. I'll release the tile set on the Discord server along with this. I've already cropped them out for you, and you're welcome. I'll be doing it after the stream. But yeah, so you can put them together. You can put the tiles together and stuff, and you can construct your own diagrams and stuff and be like, play with them. I may have spent way too much money on this. I might have had too much fun with this myself, to be honest. Do magical energies poison the caster? Depends on the magic. Like, how do I explain this? Okay, so imagine this. This might help you guys. So there's rules about how magic works in the lore Bible and how it can and cannot work. And there's rules on how to create magic systems too. Because the lore Bible is basically just a culmination of notes on how to write for the universe. It was created so that the other writers would know like what we can and cannot do, like like no time travel stuff, right? So it's like, okay, no, like you can't do this, can't do that, but you can do this and that. We know the rules. We know the rules so that we know our freedoms and what we can write. And so it's like, okay, and that's why we can be consistent. Magic is constructed in the same way and how it works. So there's a general diaphragm on how gods and celestial entities work, along with magic and how it works, and like how one becomes a mage or how one can be a mage, and how that affects everything, and what are the consequences of those things. And then we basically were like, okay, now that we have that rule set, now we can make our own magic system. And so the Celestial Order was made using those rules. Just like the Cardovian runic was, they were made with those rules. Just like the Nephiric shamans were made with those rules as well. You know the rules, and so do I. God damn it, Boog. Oh, pinchy cheeks. If there's any stars in your universe and lore about star constellations, there's lots of stars. Some of them have lore even. Some of them have a lot of lore. Some of them have entire planets of lore. You're like, what? Yeah, it's called the Cyrus system. Lamau, but it's for Terrestrias. My point is, if electricity can't work around magic, then as humans have electrical current in their bodies, it would be instantly lethal design, so no wizards or magical beings. I don't see how that's relevant to our magic, though. Electricity can work around, but it doesn't require it. Like, it's not a factor. It doesn't affect it. It doesn't really interact with it. Because technically it's ethereal. It doesn't give a shit. It's like going like, I put my hand up to stop the little fucking celestial orb that was flung at me. The celestial orb burns my hand off and goes through my all the way up my arm and then engulfs me. It didn't matter that I put my arm up because it didn't matter that my body had electricity in it. It didn't matter that the physical mass was in the way. It didn't care. It was like, meh. And then ate it. Now, does all magic negate armor? Maybe. Depends. That might boil down to game logic balance. That's where that's going to roll into play. Certain magic spells will actually do less damage based on the material, depending on what the spell is. You know what I mean? Like, for example, if you cast a fireball, which is the most basic bitch-ass fantasy spell I can think of, at a guy in, plate armor, it really boils down to how hot is that fireball, right? And what that does. Does it just, like, poof off of it? I'm like, meh. Or is it, like, so hot that the metal, like, melts? Like, how hot is it? How does it work? Does it engulf the victim? Does it just simply, like, wash over the target? So if the target was wearing, like, fabrics, it would ignite the target. Like, there's a lot of factors that play there. In lore. Now, game logic is a completely different story. But it also is affected at the same time. So there might be a penalty for attacking a certain type. I mean, there's different damage types, if that helps explain things for you. There's slashing damage, there's piercing damage for melee weapons, and there's blunt damage. And depending on whether it's plate, chainmail, leather, or other types of armor, will affect how well that weapon does damage against that specific type of armor. So plate is really good. Like a slash attack against plate is absolutely friggin' pointless. But versus a piercing attack, which Rhea uses her short sword to do piercing stabs, because she's aiming at cracks in the armor, in lore, technically. She's trying to poke at the armpit or stuff like that to nick the wounded spot, or the easy to stab parts, right? Chinks in the armor, so to speak. Versus if she used a slashing attack on a plated target, it's going to take a penalty, because it's like wiping a... Like, have you ever... I don't even know how to describe it. Like, just imagine taking a butter knife, somebody holding a frying pan, and, like, you slash at him, but the frying pan's in the way. Fuck. It just sort of slides off, you know? You're like, God damn it. I mean, if you hit it with enough force, it might leave a dent. Little bit of blunt. Are there going to be meme dances for when you victory royale? When you victory royale, meme dances. How big do you think our animation budget is? We want battle royale. Well, mod it. Mod it to be battle royale. I don't want to do that. So when the battle royale, that would be awful. A turn-based battle royale sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. Like, you just sit there and wait, like, fuck me. Any secret bosses? I can't answer that if it's supposed to be a secret. Yes, there are secret bosses. Like, answering that's like, then that are not secret then. So then I just lied. So I can't answer that. Silly little monkey. Welcome to Stream, Great Prophet. You want Battle Royale? Well, too bad. I am her, says Jabrow. Welcome to the stream. Know the rules, and so do I. Booga, hate you. Real 8 got stuck playing Witcher 3 a while. That's fine. Actually, there's some things from Witcher 3 we took a little bit of inspiration from. Not in regards to gameplay, because I personally think the gameplay for Witcher is awful and not interesting. But that's my personal opinion, and it's probably wrong to a lot of you. But in my opinion, I like the idea of folkish music, or cultural-based music. And so when talking to a composer, we're designing music based on each culture. So whenever you're in a certain culture group, you'll hear that music when you're in a certain zone doing quests for whatever reason why you'd be there, you know? It should be reflective of that thing. A full commitment, what I'm thinking. Wouldn't get this from any other guy. Boog. You become the Boog. You know the rules. Chat, stop it, you're rickrolling me. If you're not careful, chat, when we actually do release like the fucking beta gameplay trailer, I'll just rickroll you. Like gameplay trailer and be like rickroll. We go to E3, fucking pay ridiculous amounts of money to show up at that sham show, just to fucking play a rickroll video and then leave. Like, bye. Never gonna clap those cheeks. That's terrible. Right. That's awful. I'm not reading that. You're not reading Boog anymore. You just kind of wipe out of town. Tomato theming. Alright, chat. Are we done asking questions? Are we satisfied? Is that it? Do you guys want it to be over? Heil donates £2 to say, will your game have a card game in it? Had to ask me that, didn't you? You know I hate card games. The answer is no. I absolutely loathe card games. Chloe donates $1 to say, any special events in game? Like, I read that already. Special events. There might be, you know, speaking of special events, there might be like religious holidays. A religious event. Maybe the Celestial Faith has a fertility month. Eyebrows raised. I can see it now. It's like it's just painful as day. I'm like, what? I'm making that shit up, by the way. Fertility month. It's a fuck month. Make babies. Goonbarch Lego streams. We need a Gwent equivalent, Kibs. Hell no. Since we're in the meme part of the discussion, how will you make the game more inclusive and progressive? We'll just expand the amount of cultures you can attack. And erase. Not kidding. Oh. There's no intentions to make the game diverse or inclusive. The game will have X amount of cultures and characters in it, and they'll be the characters of that culture for whatever reason that the story needs them to be. The only reason that matters is whether the story needs them. If it's relevant to the quest and the story. If it's not relevant, then it doesn't get made. I will be super sad if we can't do the Windlords of Krynos, though. They're really cool. And I haven't gotten any art for them besides like one piece of art that made them look like they're absolute munchkins. But they're actually cool, though. They're like, we was living in sand and shade. Anakin would hate them. What is the general level of technology, and what is the tech range of the world, i.e. some areas being less developed? Well, I mean, it ranges from we have sticks and rocks to we have little boomsticks. That's about the range of military technology. Now, as far as the boomsticks in questions, like the actual guns, they're matchlocks and they're extremely bad. Manufacturing process is generally done by maybe guilds at best or small groups of craftsmen or artisans. Mass production of anything is not a thing. Cannons are made by cannoneers, and cannoneered boys that make those cannons takes a long time to make them, and it's very much made by like individual smiths and stuff like that. Besides the spreading of like iron, when steel became a thing, so to speak, and the massive changes that took place during the Age of Enlightenment, when Kanaru rose to power and was like, I'm literally going to gift you potatoes, and they're like, well, potato? And they was happy. They're like, here's some iron too, and it was like, what? This stick don't bend like the bronze one does. After 3 thwacks. How about the microtransactions? If you're not careful, chat, I'll put them in. You'll buy stuff that won't even appear in the game. It's like, spend $5, and it just gives us $5. You get nothing. I receive $5. Oh no, it's terrible. Do colors that don't have plate armor technology have counter units to heavy armor? Do cultures that don't have... I mean, they might have things to combat against them, like different, like special units and stuff. But if they don't have access to a lot of plate units, like you're kind of just... You're gonna have to make it up somehow, whether just throwing manpower at the problem or clever use of positioning and strategy. But the Astrians have pretty advanced steel work, or steel metals, and metal working. Like, they've got really good armor. Really good. It's one of the reasons why their empire exploded at the beginning of, even after Kanar's death during the border skirmish. Like, they were just able to massively capitalize on that. Granted, it didn't take long for the information of how to make that metal stuff, so nice and pretty, to spread, because people sold the information, stole the information, and got it any other way. But before that, before Kanar, like iron or steel-based weapons and stuff were considered like legendary weapons. It'd be like, oh my god, there's this blade that can cut through a breastplate. And they'd be like, what? A breastplate? And like, that's impossible. And then it did, and they'd be like, what the fuck? Because it was, you know, going through bronze. They just sort of pushed through it and like, oh my god, it's magic. Page joins $5 to say thanks for the DLC. Nice. Terrible. Page joins $1 says any items that can be used in battle, like health potions, etc. Will there be pillage mechanics in battle? You mean adventure combat, like where it's character on character, or are you talking about like the warfare combat? Will there be pillage mechanics? It depends on what the Astrian Empire troops are doing there. If they're there to, you know, fucking back up another kingdom, generally the other kingdom dudes are going to get mad if you start pillaging their cities while you're there and be like, we're here to help us. And you're like, thanks for the loot. Legend of Terrestria card game win. It won't be developed by me. I hope not. Any cat boys asking for a friend? No. There are no cat boys or cat girls on Terrestria, you absolute degenerate. Doesn't even make sense. Why would they develop cat ears? There are abnormals, but I don't think you're going to find them very attractive. But why is that monstrosity? Well, that's what happens when like somebody is born with the Illumine genes, and it just doesn't quite set right. And like, oh, he looks like a monstrosity. They don't really live long, but they can be extremely powerful sometimes. But it's pretty nasty. You don't want to be one of them, because imagine just slowly, continually building up energy until your little organs turn to goo, and you're like, owie. All the cancers and the tumors. All of them are yours for the right price. Any unique culture jewelry? Maybe. Who knows? Probably, if I had to guess. I mean, if you look at the character designs, I know they're all Astrian stuff, but, like, they are different. They are very different. And I do see some people have DM me their super chats. You get access to the room as soon as the thing is over. Where the hell is the ding? I was going to pull up some character designs for you. You can see this, chat. You get to be spoiled because you guys have been retardedly generous today and have made my life even easier this month by allowing us a new character concept. You basically have paid for this, chat. Do you want to see it, chat? Do you think have you been behaving, chat? What do you think? You deserve to see this. Are you going to try to cancel me when you see this? You might try to cancel. I might have to hide the screen for a second because I have to... There are certain things on this drawing that you cannot see, though. So hold on while I cover the screen. Have to Photoshop it a wee bit. A wee bit, chat. A wee bit. Copy and replace. Post him in here. Yeah, no, you can't see that. You're not allowed to see that part. That has to be covered up. Let's cover it up without ruining the other art piece. That is spoilery. There's so much stuff we cannot show you. And this, or a part of this is one of those things. There we go. All better. Pick dick? Pick dick. Okay. Okay. The Chatteroodles. The giant reminds you of Game of Thrones. They had giants in Game of Thrones? I mean, I didn't fucking... After the first season, I stopped watching because I thought it was stupid. But that's because I didn't like it. There, you're welcome, chat. You've been good. No, do not. Martin's just saying that despite everyone. There is a character we're actually working on right now of a different culture. It's a concept, a work in progress. Not done, not representative of the final piece. But it is really cool, and it is being worked on, and it's all coming together very nice. Heading dick girls he was looking at? I don't think so. I think that's a fucking reach. Will you be releasing characters via $20 DLC, or will you use loot box mechanics for the... neither. There is no planned DLC at the moment. If we did anything with expanded content, it would be an expansion pack level stuff. Like, it would be a ton of stuff. But even then, like, I have to beg the question, why? Why? Because as it stands right now, based on the design doc, like, everything's included. There's nothing really missing. No, not really. Everything's in the game. Well, no, that's not true. Everything's planned to be in the game. Currently, 90%, 99.9% of it's missing from the actual game. But this Chad lad is Chad lad. Do you plan to do game design presentations on other areas of the game, like city, town, village layout? I can do them right now, actually. But there's one thing I do need to say. This presentation was not cheap. And will probably never pay itself back, to be honest. Like, that is the sad reality. It was done, number one, to see how people would respond as an experiment. And to do another one like this would be a lot of money and might even end up being more. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. Excuse me. Not sure how I feel about it. I mean, this one's been received pretty well. Like, overall, 55 likes, pretty high, and very good viewer retentionship. Not super high, but it's the highest we've ever had for one of these presentation things. Well, whenever we talk about the game. Generally, the game doesn't get a lot of clicks because most people aren't particularly interested in, like, the specifics of this game. They're like, I'd rather just wait and see. And it's like, I know, I get that. Like, it's a long ways out, and I don't really blame people because you can't expect them to go be super invested or interested in a game that is got a long journey ahead of itself. I don't expect that. I see swastikas. Nancy's confirmed. Yeah, I was wondering how long that would take. You're not swastikas though, but whatever. They may look like it, but they're different. They're connected to each other. It's a pattern. See the line that goes through? They're very different. But yes, this is the Sunken King. Oh, the King of Luminar. And he's part of a music video. And he might be in the game, who knows? If he is in the video game, he's going to be old. Because the Luminarians were before the Astrian Republic was a thing. Was when their downfall occurred. I think like a couple hundred years, because the Astrian Republic existed for about 300 years, and technically the city-state itself was around for at least 100 or so years. I think, or was it 50? I don't remember. It wasn't like super old. And yeah, then the fucking Republic was born. And that lasted a nice 300 years. And then Kenar came along and was like, a kingdom now. Nice guy. Naughty windmills. There are no naughty windmills on him. You guys are seeing stuff that isn't actually there. Like, there's no naughty windmills in this. You guys are just seeing stuff. We're looking at other things. There's like, wait, look at these cannons. Be distracted. Aren't they the giant? The Luminarians are approximately 8 feet tall. If I show you this, like, that's Celeste. Aya. Aya's older than Celeste. Celeste is pretty young. She's like 12 or... She's around 12, I think. Aya's around, like, ish. Ria's like 21-ish? 20-ish? I can't remember. Maybe Aya's 19. I don't remember. Off the top of me head. Ezra's in between. There's Varus. There's Salinar. There's his brother, Anadris. Their father's done, technically. These are a bunch of Nefiric guys. Shaman, 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 and a Spearman. That's kind of funny. Captain Tiano, Tyra, Crondrius, Nidus. Who knows what that is? Cheddar. Big thinkies are on. Big thinkies are on. We were experimenting with monsters or creatures that were not just human. Let's just say that much. So they're the giant hoplite guy. Hoplite! There. They skewer people on their spears. Like shish kebabs. There's a reason why in the Astro Crimson War, because after the Luminarians fell, they had a large population, and while other societies genocided the ever-living shit out of them because they hated them, Dominion was like, let's incorporate them into our culture because they'll make a fine auxiliary, and they did. Astrian shish kebabs were pretty common. There's kind of a reason why they don't like big people. Astrians have a terrible history of just being bullied by people that are taller than them. You're like, they're taller than, and they beat us up. Cardovians raiding the shore. Cardovians like 6 feet tall. They're about a foot or so taller, if not 2. Luminarians are like 8 feet average or above, so it's pretty tall people. And the giants of Budawa are like Danua are like was it 12 to 14 or 12 to 16? Oh. They're pretty big. They're pretty big. That we can't. Yes, they're quite large. Hoplite, the sugar-free alternative. That's not, Jarl. When you have the picture zoomed out, then it looks like a swastika. It's just your eyes telling you lies. Will there be male player character or all girls? Player character. Now, player character is an interesting word to use, but it's a good question. Will there be male playable characters? Technically, yes. The party consists of a large diaphragm of characters. Now, in the initial start of the game, it's I can tell you that because Chapter 1's not a particularly big secret. Well, not the beginning part. Like, you start off as playing as the 3 sisters, and you get to sort of just see their life and their perspective a little bit. Then you'll be introduced to more characters like Salinar, Anadris, and what's his name? Verano. And you'll get to see them, and you'll also see Tiano and stuff like that. And you'll get a feeling for that. there actually aren't that many female characters in the game, though. Surprisingly, there are a lot in Chapter 1, so you see quite a few of them, but generally you won't see too much, because generally in Terrestria, like, women going around doing the fighting stuff is not a common thing. The only exceptions are royalty and nobles, and generally, that's why Ria and Nezra are kind of the exception, because they are nobles. Nobles are kind of able to just do what they please without much repercussion or, judgment by society. Not to mention they're literally descendants of the Valen line, which it gives them a fucking free pass on like 90% of shit. 90. Cardovia has influences of Eastern Europeans as well as some Scandinavians. So yeah, a little bit. Jobron. There's actually quite a few cultures in Cardovia. Let me pull up the map for Chatteroodles. Yeah. This is the tile sets. There wasn't too many. The artists were like, want to make the cities and the walls and stuff, and I'm like, I don't want to spend more than like $1,000 on this. This presentation was already rather expensive, but I think it was really cool. It was fun to do, though. Cardovians aren't Slavs; they're Cardovians. They're fucking cool. The Olnir are kind of cool too. The Olnir were like, we're gonna turn you into slaves, and they were like, we don't want to be slaves. And then they were slaves for a little bit. And then they were like, we're not slaves anymore. Because only your king forsook his people for some pussy. He's like, damn, this seaborn princess is pretty fucking cute. Wife's like, little upset. And that's how the Sophian Mercantile Republic came to be. I know, right? They're like, what? That's quite... What? Based on a really old story. As Kibs tries to find the fucking things. Sure. Maybe that's the right map. Nope. Old. Major Squackers. That is one hell of a name for a map, Kibs. No, that's different eras. There's so many maps, chat. Internal political map mode. No. Geopolitical map mode. Yes. There we go. It's dark, though. I've had a dark layer on, and then I took the picture. You'll have to forgive it. It doesn't have any of the regional names, though. Big sad. Because technically the Oguriel Plains are there. Astria, Halastro, Krynos, Vatsti, Avagaria, Thundun, the Mariam Ocean, the Razor Ice Sea that sucks and shouldn't go through there. Get the name of that. Sciaviccio, Golden Strait. All the places the Sunken Empire was doing. Big sad. Yeah, look, chat. There's Astria. Ta-da! Though where's the internal politics map? Internal political borders map. Mode settled. No. No, I do not want the settled one. Regional map mode. No. Religions map mode. No. Updated religions map mode. Still no. Work in progress. Probably not. Timeline map. Nope. Internal. Borders. Map mode. No. No. Whatever. I think I give up. There was a thing. Well, you know what? Maybe this has it. It's one of them. Oh well. I can tell you, like, Great House Vala, Aureus, Lanium, Estacles, etc. But that's the map mood. The map for your maps? A little bit. I found the tectonic plates map. Oh, the super squeak. Yes. So we constructed sort of different like lines of sight because like, okay, based on a nation's perspective, what is their interpretation of the world? Us. Granted, like like their actual geography is not as accurate. obviously be a little bit weirder, like things would be elongated, because technically that's how it would be. Yeah, there, you can even see this has got the regional map. There's Agorio, Jutland, Austria, Brinos, the Gulf of Atsti, North Mariam Ocean, Halastro, Ionia Sea, Abyssal Sea. I'd like to go through that little pass, wouldn't you? A little cold down there. It's a little chilly. Also, the Astrian island in the middle of the kingdom of Lane must be cause of lot of problems. Ah, Lane. Lane has and Astria have an interesting history. Lane, there's a reason why the Great House is called uh Bonium. Because technically it was part of their kingdom. Let's just say it was forcibly annexed. Yeah, not really. Well, sort of. Influenced. They were like, we want to be part of the empire. And the kingdom of Lane's like, oh, okay, we'll be tinier. we'll just be on this shitty little island. But yeah, that's the idea. I made a few variants of this. This is one of the earlier ones because it's like, okay, these sort of like fog of war maps sort of help write the nations because based on what their perspectives would be, it's like, okay, they wouldn't actually know how to circumnavigate the globe because they're fucking muppets and they haven't done that yet. They'd be like, okay, we know like we have trade with that. There was another layer to this too, like nations they have trade with but far contact with. This is like immediate relative contact and in relative immediate geopolitical influence or within sphere. Are there any plans for the characters to relive past lore events via some magically means so we get to see more of the massive timeline you've created? Oh, I have plans for that. There'll be tales and songs and stuff and whatnot that they'll actually recount tales from, like the Olniarch invasions, because the Olniarch invasions are cool. That's back when the kingdom of, or the various Konungers, the various kingdoms, were divided and they were conquered by an Olniarch warlord. Olniarch people over there, and they basically conquered them and formed the Olniarch Empire. And they began to launch massive incursions and raids into the other little kingdoms and tribes down here. Astria was big sad because their navy wasn't particularly big at that point, and they'd recently defeated the Dominion, which had almost solidified their power in the region. The Cardovians managed to like take over Concordia, and that's before Concordia was part of the empire. The king of Concordia at the time fled to Astria seeking asylum and basically pledged his nation to join the empire in exchange for his kingdom being returned. He's often referred to by Concordians as the fucking coward king who abandoned his people to the raiders as he fled and took all their riches and manpower with. And that was he's not viewed favorably in their for the Concordians. And the king of the Koninger of the Olnir set up shop there, fell in love with some sultry little thing. His wife got wind of that, got mad, and there was a bit of a fallout war, especially when he said he's going to convert to the Seaborn. That is a not okay thing to do in the Olnir runic faith. You do not convert or leave the faith. You do die. You die if you do that. The Astrian Empire got involved and helped the king of Olnir, and it was a big fucking war. They won. The Cardovians rose up against their oppressors because most of their forces had left. It was a fun time. Lots of people died, actually. The Astrian Emperor also forced the king to sign basically a deal and was like, "You're gonna leave. Don't. We're gonna kill you." And so that's why they went over to fuck with the Shoyo, who were backwards barbarians that didn't have technology or steel, and they were like, "Why?" And so they just started getting their shit kicked in. And so that's how the Sophian Mercantile Republic came to be. They were like, "Hey, we're taking half your empire," and they were pretty sad about that. But is there enough black representation? Probably not. There never is. Astrians are Astrians. It's like Cardovians are Cardovians. There is no reason for people to travel that far at this time point, even in 1022 AE. Because the game starts in 1022 AE. This map is actually 1022 AE. That's why the Nefarious Horde is fucking gargantuan. It's technically made up of several different other hordes and tribes. Because the Nefarious Horde is actually not that big, though they are considered the ruling horde. They're like that section there. I think the Rakiri are to the north, and then there's the... Fuck, I can't remember the other ones. They control different regions of the horde territory. But it's not technically a unified front. That's why the internal geopolitical map mode exists. Just like the Chi, which need to have their name reworked still, are made up of 5 different kingdoms, all under the rulership of one. United Kingdoms of the United Conungers of Cordovia, united is a loose word, is 4 kingdoms. The 5th one, I think they didn't join after the revolution against the Ulnar. I don't remember. They'll find a way. No, they won't. It'll be open source when I die. Are there any plans for the characters? Oh yeah, no, I read that. But more importantly, can we get a fishing spot map yet? The entire map would be highlighted. Ghost Jeff says, "Boo! Welcome to the stream, Jeff." Just booed his way in here. Yeah. Oh no, he is scared. I guess technically this is correct. Oh. Yeah. Okay, here you can see the different houses. House Lanium, Torius, Vala, Esticles, Helvist, Concordia, Tilius, and Nataclisius. The great houses that make up the Empire. That have an astounding amount of autonomy in the last few fucking decades. Which is not good. You taking notes on the other indie developer response to the diversity crowd? Or are you hoping the madness will be over by then? I don't care. Like, I actually don't. And I never have. There hasn't been a single point in the development history of this game in which we've actually given a shit about that. We've never cared. And we don't care how other developers respond. We don't care, period. We simply don't respond, period. Because it's a know-nothing issue. Any sort of traction is good traction. If Kibs was in the game, which kingdom would Kibs be a part of? None of them. I don't want to be a part of a single one of these nations. See, when you write them, you understand them. And when you understand them, you learn to fear them. And you don't want to be a part of the thing you don't like. You know, maybe it's bad. By the way, these different colored regions that aren't marked, for instance, they represent different tribal migration regions. There and there and there and there. So that is why they are like that. But they don't have provincial names, because technically they are settled lands. They just are, well, loosely settled. Oh yeah, and here you can see the different tribes. Bear in mind, the naming conventions are generally themed after the Astrian perspective. The Neneri, and don't really refer to themselves as conquerors, though they don't mind the name. The Altiri, the Ornir, the Boskanar, the Rakiri. Oh, the Rakiri over there. The Neneri are above the Nefaric. Nori, Furic, Kafiri. The Kafiri and the Golians not join the Horde. They just sort of continue to stay there, despite the continued push by the other empire to expand northwards. Curious that. Cheeky little gits. Welcome back, Black1970. Thank you for the donation. But I think that kind of wraps up all that stuff. So unless there's any further questions, we've kind of had a nice little conversation. And I don't mind that. That's good, because most of you guys, like most of the people that are new, don't even know about the video game and didn't know anything about it. So it was kind of good to just touch up on all of it. But I might have to have a thing introduced in the beginning, be like, okay, this is where we talk about the actual warfare mode. And then the rest is just sort of like a recap. A lot of just recapping over old stuff. But unless there's further questions about the warfare mode and how it works or is integrated into the grand mode, I feel like I've answered most of the questions, I hope. What war dogs in the game? Asked Hyle 22 minutes ago. I missed that for £2. I can't tell you that. That's a squeak. I also have to make the breeds, because technically they can't be like Malaysian warhounds or something like that, because those don't exist in this world. I was more wondering if you're prepared for them if they decide to make their business to cancel you, put the game on multi-systems, etc. I'm not really worried. I don't really care if they try. They can try, and we'll keep making the game. We've already gatekeeped the entire dev team. There is only the lads and lasses who don't give a shit about that kind of crap. That's why we were made sure to wean out any of the weasels and cowards early on. Also, we generally didn't even hire people like that. Like when we hired people, like Bubbles we'd background check them first. We were like, okay, let's see your credentials. Are you prone to spurging out and backstabbing your own teammates? And then if we saw that and we're like, they've had a bad history of like backstabbing the other teams they worked with, maybe we won't hire them. And we don't. If you can't make the cut, you don't get in. Like 1917 doing $3 say, will there be official porn of your characters? Official? Probably not. I can't waste resources on that. If fan artist wants to make their own stuff, be more than welcome to. But there isn't a single piece of official art. There's some actual lewd pieces, but nothing official. And if people want to make that, awesome. I like fan art, and that's actually a good sign that people actually care. I wouldn't actually be offended. I would actually be like, at least somebody cared. Somebody was that invested. That's a compliment at this point. You can't really be upset over that. Are the different color of Austrian provinces or the difference between the Nord, Middle, and South? North, Middle, and South. No, they're the difference of the themes that they basically operate on. Because in the degraded state that the Astrian Empire is in, the Imperial Army has been reduced to a fucking shell of its former self, and the houses have begun to raise their own legionary forces and for regional defense, which has helped with stopping the Horde's advancement almost completely, as well as maintaining different regions of the Empire, as well as putting a lot of the strain off the Astrian Imperial Treasury and onto the House Lords. Power originally wasn't that great besides outside of governor dutyship, but the House Lords now have a lot more power, and they have their own standing army. And a lot of unique troops, too. Like the Taurian elite infantry is quite special. The Alanium have cool bow dudes. The Concordians have a awesome navy. Atticlesius has some really cool mercenaries because of all their mun-muns they get. Ilias is just sort of like, I have some slingers. Helvest is kind of in a similar situation. Like, they don't have much. Tilius and Helvest are kind of the two relatively weaker houses. Wait for the dating sim for that. People want to make a fan game? I wouldn't mind it, as long as they ask for permission. Them to do that for Regal regions. Because you kind of have to defend your IP. It depends on a couple of factors. But I don't mind fanworks. Fanworks are awesome. I'd be grateful if they did them. You have dating mechanics, it's important. No. When considering the romance options in the game, we've kind of just sort of leaned away from it from the time being. Because while romance is an interesting thing, it's not the focus of the story. There's too many things that are far more important, like the different friendships and things that these characters have, and there might be a romance that occurs. I'm not going to say anything for certain, or maybe there are a few. Maybe there's options. I don't even know. It's one of the things that there's so many other very important things to focus on than that at the moment. But it's something that should be addressed, because Rhea does need to have an heir. being like 20 and not having an heir is actually a pretty big deal. That's the thing with monarchies, and back then too, you wanted to produce children pretty quickly. Need replacements, literally. If the internet can make Rule 34 from a female LaBox viewable for 17 seconds and Ratchet and Clank trailer, I'm sure your game is in good hands. Well, actually, not quite. Our game is niche. Our game is under the radar, and it will probably remain so for a very long time until we can push it further and further into the limelight. It's not a particularly big thing right now because right now the focus is making the game. We'll worry about, pushing that kind of direction when we get closer and closer. Honestly, I'm pretty confident once people see the gameplay and once we have the gameplay properly developed and the mechanics functional and covered with art, most importantly, because right now it looks like an interesting. It mechanically is getting it's getting there. It's getting there. Like it's actually coming together, and it's really exciting. But it's missing pretty stuff. Like it doesn't look very pretty to look at. Like the artists have a lot of assets, but they're actually sitting in an asset bin because the programmers are more focused on the mechanical aspects of them. And that's way more important than covering it in pretty art. We can do the pretty art for the UI and all the combat animations down the road because they're actually easy for the programmers by comparison to actually getting the mechanics in place, which is the primary focus. Once all the primary mechanics are implemented, development should pick up. But the prototyping stage is the hardest stage, which is why we're trying to hammer our way through it so we can get to the closed alpha testing, so we can start offloading the testing feedback onto players so that we don't have to do it so much internally. Because God only knows how many bugs we're missing. Everybody on the team's testing the game, but even if you have all 14 of us test it for a few hours, or maybe a couple days in a row, the amount of bugs we're going to miss is astronomical. Because testing a game is all about doing things that you wouldn't expect. And that's what's great about opening up to more testers, is they can start doing things you would never expect. Like, I never thought you could do that. It's like, for example, we'd never tested whether you could move the window from one of the UI outside of the screen, the play space. And somebody, eventually on the team, slid the was it the spell book or something off the screen, and then was like, "Oh, I'll just close the spell book and open it again." Well, the way we set up the designs is that the spell book is saved so that whenever you close a window in the game, the window will be remembered to that spot and will open back to its original spot. So you can, like I like my spell book to open in that corner. Okay, it'll open up in that corner from now on. Well, problem is it's saved outside the play space where you can't pan the camera, and so they press the button to close it on the utility bar, and then press the button to open it. It opens outside the play space. Bit difficult to access the spell book if it remembers to open it outside of the play space area. So that was a problem. That happened. But, you learn, you address those problems, and you patch them out. And that's what testers are for. They help find the bugs, the problems, the cracks, because God only knows how many there are actually hiding in there. And there are tons of bugs. And the only way you can fix them is by finding them, because you never know, right? The code monkeys combine things together, and it looks like it works, and for all intents and purposes it works. Then we test it, and we're like, how come the combat calculations aren't working anymore? Oh, the combat's not even functioning anymore. Nothing, you can't attack anymore. The attack button's broken. You can just move and end your turn. These are things that happen. You can duplicate your items to an infinity every turn. Because every turn you'd hit, I remember there's that bug. You'd end your turn and you could drag items out of your inventory and into your character. But the problem is every time you hit end turn, you do it again because it never deleted the items from the inventory. It didn't remember that. And so while it remembered that they were equipped, it would not remember that they were gone. So when you hit end turn, it cycled back to your turn. The items are back in your inventory. And there wasn't, because we hadn't factored that in yet, you could continually stack them. So, like, we had Rhea wearing like 35 helmets. 30. technically speaking, though, mechanically, they didn't do anything yet. They were just like, okay, this is just a basic outline for dragging the items into the character. Currently, the helmets did shit for protection. They just said helmet. Okay, she's wearing a helmet. Doesn't do anything. That was an early bug, but it was still a funny one. Because you could just duplicate items to infinity. How can I get infested if there's no waifus? Boo! There are waifus. Boo earns. What? Wait, you have some functioning parts now? The game has been functioning for a while. Now you're making me hurt. It very much has been working. In fact, I've played it a few times. It's not in a presentable state, though. It's kind of ugly looking, but it is playable. It doesn't have a lot of art. That's why. Very rough around the edges. We only recently got some placeholder art for the UI. And even so, they're still missing art for, like, the proper map. But yeah. We're making progress. We're making progress. So, fellas, any other questions you guys have on the warfare mechanic? Or just in general while I'm here? I'm going to end the stream pretty soon. I think we touched up and we had a nice good more or less catch up and recap over everything. Quite a hefty recap, though I skimmed over some issues. Or not necessarily issues, but topics. Technically, those aren't issues. I've gone a lot. 60-hour weeks are busy. Yeah, I know, dude. Hang in there. That's pretty rough. I too work 10 hours a day. It sucks. I wish I didn't. It's fucking 70 hours a week. And currently I have an extra client, so that's an additional 2 hours a day. Oh, I just can't wait for this to be over. Need to hang in there. We're almost there. It's almost over. We'll get there. We'll get there. Let's see. I arrive and the stream ends. Funny. There's still a thing. Look, we streamed fairly long, okay? And we'll still be doing another stream later, so if people watch the VOD and want to talk about it some more, we can. Permanent body, yeah or nay? Permanent body? Will you make multiple battle lines viable? Like they were in real life on, like, say, Total War or every other game? Oh, you're talking about, like, troops in reserve. Because there would be troops in reserve waiting to go up again. Because they get tired. Probably. I mean, the idea is to try to make it like an actual, like, tabletop war game, but in the sense of a video game. That was the idea of this mode. So, like, stamina is a thing on a unit. Just like the unit's morale and its technically its quote-unquote health bar. Or integrity, if you want to call it that, because it's the amount of operational soldiers that are still fighting, that aren't wounded, or have died. It's not that bad for me, Ghost Jeff. I work from home. Though it does get very tiresome and exhaustive. In a different way than other jobs do. It's like you don't have time for anything anymore. But you learn to try to just force time in. It sucks. But the pay is good, so I can't complain too much. Are you planning to do a playthrough when the game is done? Or do you think you will know the game too well for there to be any point for you to get any enjoyment? I mean, I probably will. Not just for that, but I should. Because it's the game we made. It should be played. And not just played, but it should be made sure that it's enjoyable. If I can't enjoy it, then I failed. And the game's not that good. So no. The game will be fun. It will be fun for me and everyone on the team. Just like it'll be fun for you guys. I mean, I'm having fun messing around with it. Doesn't hardly have all the fucking mechanics implemented at the moment. There's a lot missing, like the microsquare update hasn't happened. I can't wait for that one. That one's going to be exciting. The micro square is going to change how movement works quite a bit, which is going to need tweaking with the AP and how that cost value is distributed. Before it was quite simple. Now with the micro squares, things are going to be a little bit complicated. Not tires, and the first line shatters, and the second line then uses this to obliterate the enemy. It pursues and that sort of stuff. I mean, it depends. There's only so much you can do in a video game. But, like I said, we're going to try to make it kind of realistic if we can, so that it's kind of like simulating that, like the officers do stuff, so if the officer dies, things will happen. Musicians and bannermen matter. Though the odds of them dying are going to be pretty fucking small. Because most of the time, the officer wouldn't throw their lives away. They pull back a little bit and let the others do the fighting, because they're kind of important. They're kind of what holds the unit together. But the possibility should always exist. Boy. What about an army painter? See, well, that sounds easy and cheap. It's actually extremely expensive. An army painter would be cool. I'm not going to lie to you. It would be something that would be actually cool to implement, but I don't think we have the resources to do. Not now, anyways. But I'll put that on the table of things to consider, though. Like, I like the idea. Like, for example, each unit I want to have an officer, and that officer helps determine the unit's progression. So that each unit has progression in the army that you control. Technically, the Empire has more than one army, obviously. But there's obviously the elite royal army that's attached to the actual, bloodline, so to speak. The best of the best, if you will. So that's the idea with that. And I like the idea that each unit has its own personalization. So, like, for example, one of the spear units might have like a certain ability or something based on how they progress. I do want it to sort of operate that way. I work 98 hours a week. Oof, but I work with dogs, so it's not so bad. 98 hours is still rough, though. And no matter how you slice it, like, I'm exhausted. I work 10 hours a day, and then I stream for 4 hours. And that's 14 hours. That's pretty rough. But that's at home, so it's not that bad. Like, you're going out with dogs and stuff. That's a lot more exertive. Like, a lot more exertive. A lot. How's the Cody Davis? Catch up. Oh, yeah, you should catch up with each other, chat. By the way, you should all join the Discord server. Link is in the description. And then that way, when I end the stream, you guys can continue your conversations without me having to run the stream all the time. That way you guys can be friends outside of the streams. That might not be the smartest thing to say, because it might kill the chat viewer base and audience. Super sad if that actually happened, but it is important to me that you guys are friends. And you bond. It's good. It's good to bond. Make friends. Because I know some of you guys are little muppets. And like, I don't want to talk to people. God damn it. Customization is nice. I always liked my army customization and progression. Yeah, a little bit of like ideas I had was actually kind of like, I was thinking like, oh, Shogun 2 is kind of cute. Like, your units would individually level up and stuff. And I was like, yeah, that would be something I'd want to do. Like, I do want stuff like that, but the question is, how much can I make? Because as the more stuff I add, the longer the development time takes, the more money it costs. So it's really just a balance of doing as much as I can that makes the most difference. And as long as it makes the game better, that's all that matters. Make good background noise while I do shit. I'm glad. This kind of made a pseudo stream. We'll probably do another stream today, but I think I need to lie down for a bit. I think I might have overdone it today. I'm feeling very dead inside. That might have to do with the fact that I got up at like, I think not 2, like 4 or 5. And I just started working on this and doing my job at the same time. And I have to do more of my job, and I have to do the regular stream. Just start selling army packs like Total War. That will fund your game. No. They don't want to do that kind of stuff. Like, you joke, but like, and it's a funny joke, I'm not gonna lie. But like, the idea of that's just, I bitch and moan about that shit all the time for a reason. I bitch and moan about elevation mechanics. That's why I went out of my way to make it an our game, because it's like, you know, it's sad that those games don't have that. I feel like they should try. And while I only have a limited amount of resources, I know that it's possible, that I can make it work. I know we can do it. It's good though. Don't feel bad for me, chat. My job's good. It pays well. In fact, because it pays well, we're able to fund this game. That's good. That's a very good thing. Wish I got paid for most of my work, says Ghost Jeff. There's not much money in my field of research. That sucks. Sorry to hear. Take the Epic Games exclusivity deal, Kibs. You know you want to. No, I don't. That's not good. It's not good for a lot of reasons. There's more bad. Like, okay, let's talk about the good, because the good is actually super short. The good is they pay for a certain portion of the development, maybe like $1 million, which would be like a godsend in some aspects, but it'd be a curse. It'd be a curse because it would ruin my reputation forever. I'll be a sellout. I'll be literally the thing I've always advocated against. The second thing it would do that would also ruin my life would simply be the fact that, like, I've now alienated people from our potential audience. It's already hard enough in today's climate to sell a game that doesn't have contemporary politics in it, because for some reason people throw a tantrum if there isn't, or if it's offensive or something like that. To topple that off by alienating more people from potentially getting into the IP is bad enough. We're a baby IP. We need to grow. We need to build trust, and we need to make sure that we always maintain that trust. And so first impressions are lasting impressions. We need to earn that right to be trusted. And we haven't earned that right. We haven't made our game yet. We're still working on it. We have a long way to go. And even when we earn that right, it's all about maintaining it. Like, you have the trust of the players, you need to maintain that. You have the trust that you're going to make a good product. You need to deliver that good product. So I'm doing everything in my power to make the best thing I can with whatever resources I have at my disposal to make sure it's the best thing we can possibly make. I got the best artists, I've got the best everything. Got the best programmers, got the best assistants. I've gone out of my way to personally handpick them and research and talk to them and get to know them. I've invested time, I've invested money, done everything it takes. And that's still not going to be enough, because we have a long way to go. It's all in the execution. When are the game black? Funny. There aren't any. Hey, that reminds me. Will the Roman knockoff shields still be carried on their back? Roman knockoff shields? Astrians don't use Roman shields. You little monkey. I could donate 1,000,000 Uzbekistanis. But why not Kibistanis? That'd be funny for the meme. Is their currency that inflated? That's actually sad. Or combat wheelchairs. Seems like a waste of animation money, if you ask me. Very niche research. Don't share it. Sorry. Actually, it's not a bad thing to not share that kind of information. God, man, you say that, but like, the Astrians don't use fucking tower shields. They never have. They use a little fucking spherical shield because they're monkeys. And they're like, look at my little circle. Look at my little oval. Now, you might be talking about northern Astrians, but northern Astrians aren't quite the same. They're Astrians in name, but not quite. How much are you going to pay to review your game? Will it be dollars, cheeks, or Dota games? I'm not going to pay him anything. I'm going to give him a copy of the game and be like, just play it, and I hope you like it. If you don't like it, I'll be sad. That's about it. Scootum. Every time I see somebody type scootum, I think scrotum. Like, he carried the scrotum. Like, why did he carry the scrotum? Does he wax his scrotum? Like, oh, shitty. Go again. Martin, you're the same person that told me Swedish people never built sod houses. And then when I googled sod roofs in Sweden, I found a plethora of them, as long with an article talking about how the sod roofs were common and have been common for your people for fucking centuries. Sod man, you're often wrong about most things. You don't have a good track record. I like you, Martin, but you're wrong about most things. Chariots are garbage. How could you say that? Chariots are just misunderstood. Also OP. I'll be sure to put them in our game and make sure they're OP too. Martin, I'm gonna put you in a sod house. Alright. We procrastinated long enough, I think. I think I've squeezed all the questions I can out of you. I milked the chat of questions. But yes, if you do have further questions, no worries. And if you missed this and you're watching the VOD in the Discord server, you can ask questions there. You can also post questions in the comments, and I'll try to get back to them. I can. Either way, guys, you guys have yourself a fantastic day. I'll probably stream again later today, but it might be a short stream because, you know, kind of a little... Oh, I missed a donation. Just a few seconds ago. Bimble donates a very generous $60 to say, thanks for the presentation. Here's something for spend on art. Thank you. That makes a huge difference. And I will be sure to do that. This month, the last couple months, you guys have been extremely generous. And I have to say thank you all again, because without you guys, like, I couldn't do half of the stuff I do. At least, we'd be 50% behind where we are now if it wasn't for you guys. But either way, thanks for the support. Thanks for being here. Thanks for just taking the time out of your day to check out this video game that we're working on. I appreciate it, and thanks for the feedback. I really appreciate that too. You guys have yourself a nice day, and we'll talk to you all later. Good night.